السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله، الحمد لله، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Continuing with our study of the Jami' of Imam Abi Isa Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Sawrat al-Tirmidhi رحمه الله تعالى، المتوفى سنة 79 و200 للهجرة. We are on أبواب الإيمان عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، باب بلا ترجمة. Afraz is supposed to present, but he said he's going to be a bit late. So inshallah we'll get started. And then maybe towards the end of class, we'll leave some time for his presentation.
Okay. Um, was it a bab?
Yeah, number 10 in the
Yeah.
without any
Yes.
additional words.
Okay. بسم الله وبالسند المتصل منا إلى الإمام الحافظ أبي عيسى محمد بن عيسى بن سورة الترمذي رحمه الله تعالى، المتوفى سنة 79 و200 للهجرة. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة
متعنا بعلومه.
ومتعنا بعلومه وبركاته آمين. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة قال
No, so
حدثنا الليث.
if you just read that وبالسند المتصل, then you don't need to say وبه. وبه is shorthand for وبالسند المتصل.
أوكي. قال حدثنا قتيبة قال حدثنا الليث عن ابن الهادي عن محمد بن إبراهيم بن الحارث عن عامر بن سعد عن العباس بن عبد المطلب رضي الله عنه وعنهم أنه سمع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول صلى الله. Sorry. يقول ذاق طعم الإيمان من رضي بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد نبيا. هذا حديث حسن صحيح. قال حدثنا ابن أبي
وبه.
عمر. وبه قال
So
حدثنا ابن أبي
if you
عمر.
say وبالسند المتصل منا, and then you read a hadith directly, then you would just say قال. Then on the next hadith, then you would say وبه قال.
Okay. وبه قال حدثنا ابن أبي عمر قال حدثنا عبد الوهاب الثقفي عن أيوب عن أبي قلابة عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ثلاث من كن فيه وجد بهن طعم الإيمان: من كان الله ورسوله أحب إليه مما سواهما، وأن يحب المرء لا يحبه إلا لله، وأن يكره أن يعود في الكفر بعد إذ أنقذه الله منه، كما يكره أن يقذف في النار. هذا حديث حسن صحيح. وقد رواه قتادة عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم.
So this is just supporting the idea that there's different levels of iman. Right? So someone can be at a level of faith where they'll taste the sweetness of faith. Continue.
قال باب لا يزني الزاني وهو مؤمن. وبه قال حدثنا أحمد بن منيع قال حدثنا عبيدة بن حميد عن الأعمش عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا يزني الزاني وهو مؤمن، ولا يسرق السارق وهو مؤمن، ولكن التوبة معروضة. وفي الباب عن ابن عباس وعائشة وعبد الله بن أبي أوفى رضي الله عنهم. حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه حديث حسن غريب صحيح من هذا الوجه. وقد روي عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا زنى العبد خرج منه الإيمان فكان فوق رأسه كالظلة، فإذا خرج من ذلك العمل عاد إليه الإيمان. وروي عن أبي جعفر محمد بن علي أنه قال في هذا خروج عن الإيمان إلى الإسلام. وقد روي من غير وجه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال في الزنا والسرقة: من أصاب من ذلك شيئا فأقيم عليه الحد فهو كفارة ذنبه، ومن أصاب من ذلك شيء فستره الله عليه فهو إلى الله تعالى، إن شاء عذبه يوم القيامة وإن شاء غفر له. روى ذلك علي بن أبي طالب وعبادة بن الصامت وخزيمة بن ثابت رضي الله عنهم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وبه قال حدثنا أبو عبيدة بن أبي السفر أحمد بن عبد الله الهمداني قال حدثنا الحجاج بن محمد عن يونس بن أبي إسحاق عن أبي إسحاق المهداني عن أبي جحيفة عن علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه وعنهم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من أصاب حدا فعجل عقوبته في الدنيا فالله أعدل من أن يثني على عبده العقوبة في الآخرة، ومن أصاب حدا فستره الله عليه وعفى عنه فالله أكرم من أن يعود في شيء قد عفى عنه. هذا حديث حسن غريب، وهذا قول أهل العلم، لا نعلم أحدا كفر أحدا بالزنا والسرقة وشرب الخمر.
Right, so these these ahadith, right, they are meant to show the severity of sin, right? They mentioned on the previous page in حاشية سهل الخوري: لا يزني الزاني وهو مؤمن. الواو للحال فظاهر يدل على أن صاحب الكبيرة ليس بمؤمن، وأصحابنا أولوه بأن المراد بالمؤمن الكامل في إيمانه وذو أمن من عذاب الله. That someone who's complete in their faith, someone who will be saved from entering the hellfire in the hereafter, even for a period of time. أو المراد المؤمن المطيع لله أو معناه, or it's referring to a believer who is obedient to Allah. أو معناه الزجر والوعيد والإنذار لمرتكب هذه الكبائر، إذ مرتكبها لا يؤمن عليه أن يقع في الكفر الذي هو ضد الإيمان. That if someone engages in this type of sin, there is no telling whether he will remain on Iman in the long term, given that he is engaging in these types of major sins, that these deteriorate a person's Iman. And so that is the understanding of these ahadith. And Imam Tirmidhi, he mentions that at the end, that no one actually does takfir of someone. He doesn't know of anyone who actually does takfir of someone for engaging in one of these sins. But this is this is a way of showing how severe those sins are. In terms of satr, he mentioned the footnote, right, that just because kafara may be a means of expiation, doesn't mean that one should seek to get the had. Rather, if they should cover their mistakes and cover their sins, right? فستره الله عليه. قال الشافعي: واجب لمن أصاب ذنبا فستره الله عليه أن يستر على نفسه ويتوب فيما بينه وبين ربه. وكذلك روي عن أبي بكر وعمر رضي الله عنهما أنهما أمر رجلا أن يستر على نفسه. So if a person is convicted and they show remorse, then it will be an expiation for their sins. But that doesn't mean they go around and try to get the punishment. Rather, they should seek the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek His forgiveness in private and cover their sins. Continue.
قال باب ما جاء المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة قال حدثنا الليث عن ابن عجلان عن القعقاع عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده، والمؤمن من أمنه الناس على دمائهم وأموالهم. ويروى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه سئل: أي المسلمين أفضل؟ قال: من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. حدثنا بذلك إبراهيم بن سعيد الجوهري قال حدثنا أبو أسامة عن بريد بن
وبه
عبد.
قال حدثنا.
وبه قال حدثنا بذلك إبراهيم بن سعيد الجوهري قال حدثنا أبو أسامة عن بريد بن عبد الله بن أبي بردة عن جده أبي بردة عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه وعنهم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سئل: أي المسلمين أفضل؟ قال: من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. هذا حديث صحيح غريب من حديث أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وفي الباب عن جابر وأبي موسى وعبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهم حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه حديث حسن صحيح.
Okay.
Continue.
Yeah.
Um, قال باب ما جاء أن الإسلام بدأ غريبا وسيعود غريبا. وبه قال حدثنا أبو كريب قال حدثنا حفص بن غياث عن الأعمش عن أبي إسحاق عن أبي الأحوص عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن الإسلام بدأ غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ، فطوبى للغرباء. وفي الباب عن سعد وابن عمر وجابر وأنس وعبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهم. هذا حديث حسن غريب صحيح من حديث ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه، وإنما نعرفه من حديث حفص بن غياث عن الأعمش. وأبو الأحوص اسمه عوف بن مالك بن نضلة الجشمي تفرد به حفص. وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن عبد الرحمن قال أخبرنا إسماعيل بن أبي أويس قال حدثني كثير بن عبد الله بن عمرو بن عوف بن زيد بن ملحة عن أبيه عن جده رضي الله عنه وعنهم إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إن الدين لا يأرز إلى الحجاز كما تأرز الحية إلى جحرها، ولا يعقلن الدين في الحجاز معقل الأروية من رأس الجبل. إن الدين بدأ غريبا ويرجع غريبا، فطوبى للغرباء الذين يصلحون ما أفسد الناس من بعدي من سنتي. هذا حديث حسن.
Okay. So, over here, right, it's talking about the situation of Islam at the beginning and at the end of times. Right? And so إن الإسلام بدأ غريبا وسيعود كما بدأ فطوبى للغرباء. And then you have the next hadith that's talking about إن الدين لا يأرز إلى الحجاز. You have other hadith that talk about لا يأرز إلى المدينة. And so this means to take refuge. Right? He says in the footnote أي ينضم إليها وينقبض والمأرز الملجأ أيضا, a place of refuge. Right? And so he says in the footnote over here هذا إما خبر عما كان في ابتداء الهجرة. So either this is referring to what the first part of the previous hadith is talking about, إن الإسلام بدأ غريب, or it's referring to the second part وسيعود كما بدأ, أو عما يكون في آخر الزمان حين يقل الإسلام فينضم إلى المدينة ويبقى فيها كذا في العين. ولا يعقلن الدين في الحجاز معقل الأروية في رأس جبل ولا يعقلن ولا يتحصن ولا يت آم، يتحصن آم، ويعتصم ويلتجئ و... و... لا يتحصن ويعتصم ويلتجئ إليه. They'll take protection and refuge in it كما يلتجئ الوعل من رأس الجبل. وعل a mountain goat. And so, yeah, so a mountain goat. And it says, Urwiya is, Urwiya, this is um, الأنثى من الوعول. So just like a mountain goat seeks refuge, goes to the mountain and seeks refuge in the mountain, in the same way, the deen will be take refuge over there. And then he mentions in this hadith, it also clarifies what does غرباء mean. الذين يصلحون ما أفسد الناس من بعدي من سنتي. Those that revive the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll be in a restaurant. Okay. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Continue.
بسم الله. قال باب ما جاء في علامة المنافق. وبه قال حدثنا أبو حفص عمرو بن علي قال حدثنا يحيى بن محمد بن قيس عن العلاء بن عبد الرحمن عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم آية المنافق ثلاث: إذا حدث كذب، وإذا وعد أخلف، وإذا اؤتمن خان. وهذا حديث حسن غريب من حديث العلاء، وقد روي من غير وجه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وفي الباب عن عبد الله بن مسعود وأنس وجابر رضي الله عنهم. قال حدثنا علي بن حجر قال حدثنا إسماعيل بن جعفر عن أبي سهيل بن مالك عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم نحوه. وأبو سهيل هو عم مالك بن أنس، واسمه نافع بن مالك بن أبي عامر الخولاني الأصبحي.
So you have these hadith about the signs of the munafiq. Some hadith mention 3, some mention 4. And a lower number does not negate the higher number, right? These are signs of you have nifaq, 2 types of nifaq: nifaq amali and nifaq i'tiqadi. Nifaq in terms of actions, and then nifaq in terms of beliefs, right? So one's actions can be hypocritical, even if their belief is sincere. And so this is talking about actions that are hypocritical. And the reason the Prophet ﷺ is highlighting these things is because if someone's actions are hypocritical, then it may lead to them having hypocrisy in their faith as well. And so in this hadith he mentions 3, in another hadith he's going to mention 4, right, in the upcoming hadith. Right? And all of these have to do with speech, right? And you can say they're almost like gradual progression. That one is just lying, which is إذا حدث كذب. When he speaks, he lies. وإذا وعد أخلف. This is usually you make a promise with like a statement, right? He makes a promise, and he goes against that promise, and then when he's trusted with something, he betrays that trust. He is treacherous. Continue.
وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا عبيد الله بن موسى عن سفيان عن الأعمش عن عبد الله بن مرة عن مسروق عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: 4 من كن فيه كان منافقا، وإن كانت فيه خصلة منهن كانت فيه خصلة من النفاق حتى يدعها: من إذا حدث كذب، وإذا وعد أخلف، وإذا خاصم فجر، وإذا عاهد غدر. هذا حديث حسن صحيح. وإنما معنى هذا عند أهل العلم نفاق العمل، وإنما كان نفاق التكذيب على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. هكذا روي عن الحسن البصري شيء من هذا. قال حدثنا الحسن بن علي الخلال قال حدثنا عبد الله بن نمير عن الأعمش عن عبد الله بن مرة بهذا الإسناد نحوه. هذا حديث حسن صحيح.
So over here, he said, وإنما كان نفاق التكذيب على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. That some say that nifaq, in terms of one's beliefs, one's i'tiqad, that was what he's calling nifaq al-takdhib. This was only really at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was the main time. That was mainly when it was. Afterwards, it wasn't the same situation. And this is a statement of Hasan al-Basri. So that's opinion. That's his opinion. But not necessarily everyone agrees with that. Also in this hadith over here, you see what إِذَا عَاهَدَ غَدَرَ. وإذا اؤتمن خان, they can be referring to similar, they're referring to similar things, right? Different over here when he takes a covenant, when he makes a covenant, when he makes an agreement, then he breaks that agreement. Continue.
وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن بشار قال حدثنا أبو عامر قال حدثنا إبراهيم بن طهمان عن علي بن عبد الأعلى عن أبي النعمان عن أبي وقاص عن زيد بن أرقم رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا وعد الرجل وينوي أن يفي به فلم يف به فلا جناح عليه. هذا حديث غريب وليس إسناده بالقوي. علي بن عبد الأعلى ثقة وأبو النعمان مجهول وأبو وقاص مجهول.
Okay, so this hadith is weak, but he's bringing us to highlight a point that this is someone who these hadith are talking about someone who this is their habit, this is something that they do intentionally. It's not that it's a one-off thing. You made a promise and you ended up not following through with it because of unforeseen circumstances, and that was not your intention whatsoever. You tried everything you could. This is not what it's referring to. It's referring to someone who intentionally does it, someone who doesn't even try to fulfill his promises, someone who doesn't even try to tell the truth. They have no issue with lying. And so that's why he brings this hadith. Even though it is weak, you have two majhul narrators, right? Between Ali ibn Abdul A'la and Zayd ibn Arqam, both of the narrators are majhul, but regardless, he brings it to highlight that point. Continue.
قال باب ما جاء سباب المؤمن فسوق. وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن عبد الله بن بزيع قال حدثنا عبد الحكيم بن منصور الواسطي عن عبد الملك بن عمير عن عبد الرحمن بن عبد الله بن مسعود عن أبيه رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قتال المسلم أخاه كفر وسبابه فسوق. وفي الباب عن سعد وعبد الله بن مغفل رضي الله عنهما. حديث ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه حديث حسن صحيح وقد روي عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه من غير وجه.
Right. قتال المسلم أخاه كفر. Kufr over here, either this is talking about right, either talking about كفر دون كفر من extremely severe sin, or it's saying that if he does it thinking that it is permissible to do so, then this will take him out of the fold of Islam, as we've seen in other hadith where kufr is being used to refer to major sins. And cursing them is fisq.
قال وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا وكيع عن سفيان عن زبيد عن أبي وائل عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سباب المسلم فسوق وقتاله كفر. هذا حديث حسن صحيح. قال باب في من رمى أخاه بكفر. وبه قال حدثنا أحمد بن منيع قال حدثنا إسحاق بن يوسف الأزرق عن هشام الدستوائي عن يحيى بن أبي كثير عن أبي قلابة عن ثابت بن الضحاك عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ليس على العبد نذر فيما لا يملك ولاعن المؤمن كقتاله ومن قذف مؤمنا بكفر فهو كقاتله ومن قتل نفسه بشيء عذبه الله بما قتل به نفسه يوم القيامة. وفي الباب عن أبي ذر وابن عمر رضي الله عنهم. هذا حديث حسن صحيح.
Thabit ibn Dhahhak. Is this a Sahabi or not? Um, yeah. Okay. Um, right. ثابت بن الضحاك ابن أمية من ثعلب الأنصاري الخزرجي، وهو أبو جبيرة بن الضحاك. كان ثابت بن الضحاك رديف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، رديف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوم الخندق، ودليله إلى حمراء الأسد، وكان ممن بايع تحت الشجرة بيعة الرضوان وهو صغير. So he rode with the Prophet ﷺ to, um, this is from Ibn Abd al-Barr, um, rode behind the Prophet ﷺ on the day of Khandaq, and he guided him to Hamra al-Asad. Hamra al-Asad is where they went after Uhud, um, following the army out of Medina. And so he was there as well. And so he's a younger Sahabi, Thabit ibn Dhahhak radiallahu anhu. So ليس على العبد نذر فيما لا يملك. So over here he says, he explains the situation in the footnote, صورته أن يقول إن شفى الله مرضي فالعبد الفلاني حر. If Allah cures my sickness, then so-and-so slave is free. Or another way of saying it, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cures me, then I'll donate this person's, some random person's car in charity. وليس فيه ملكه, and it's not in his ownership. وإن دخل بعد ذلك في ملكه لم يلزمه الوفاء بنذره بخلاف ما إذا علق عتق عبد بملكه فإنه يعتق عندنا بعد التملك. And this is, so in this case, he does not have to fulfill it. However, he says, if he says something like, if I get this person's car, if I buy this person's car, then I'm going to donate it to charity. Then once he buys the car, immediately he's required to give it to charity. Or in this case, if he says, if I gain ownership of such and such slave, then he is free. Then as soon as he purchases that slave, as soon as that slave comes into his ownership, then that slave is automatically freed. So it's not going to be a binding. It's not going to be a binding nadhr if it's for something regarding something he doesn't own. وَلَاعِنُ الْمُؤْمِنِ كَقَاتِلِهِ, doing la'an, sending la'na on another believer is haram, right? Because la'na is what? إِبْعَادُ عَنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ, to be distant from the mercy of Allah. And that is not something that can be asked for regarding another Muslim. And so that is, this is to show its severity. Right? كقاته في التحريم والعقاب. As he said in the footnote, هذا من إلحاق الناقص بالكامل تغليظا وتشديدا له. So killing them is definitely worse, but this is just like that is haram, just like killing them is haram, cursing them specifically sending la'na upon them, because person can have different meanings in English, but specifically sending la'na upon them, this is something that is completely haram. وَمَنْ قَذَفَ مُؤْمِنًا بِكُفْرٍ فَهُوَ كَقَاتِلِهِ. If someone accuses, qadh is to throw an accusation, right? قَذَفَ يَقْذِفُ literally means to throw, means to accuse someone of something. So if someone accuses a believer of disbelief, then he is like his killer. Again, showing the severity of doing so. And whoever kills himself with something, whoever commits suicide, then Allah will punish him with the thing that he killed himself with on the Day of Judgment. That his punishment will be that he will have to repeat that. He will have to repeat that scenario in the hereafter. In the same way he killed himself, he will be punished in that same way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Continue.
وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة عن مالك بن أنس عن عبد الله بن دينار عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أيما رجل قال لأخيه كافر فقد باء بها أحدهما. هذا حديث صحيح.
And so this hadith, whoever calls his Muslim brother kafir, then it has become then it has returned to one of them, meaning that either literally it would be that either that person is actually kafir or you have committed kufr. But again, this is for taghlid. As you said, mentioned in the footnote over here, ظاهره أن من قال لأحد هو كافر أو يا كافر وهو ليس بكافر فقد كفر أي قائله. واستشكل بأن غاية ما فيه أنه كذب ومعصية، والكذب ليس بكفر والمؤمن لا يكفر بالمعاصي. وتوجيهه أنه لما قال للمسلم كافر فقد كفر بجعل الإسلام كفرا واعتقاد بطلان دين الإسلام، فافهم. وأما إذا قال بقصد السب من غير اعتقاد بطلان دين الإسلام فقد يوجه بأنه محمول على المستحل لذلك واستحلال المعصية كفر، وبأن المراد أنه يؤول it results in or leads to أنه يؤول ويفضي به إلى الكفر. It leads him to disbelief. وبأن الراجع إلى القائل ليس هو الكفر حقيقة بل المراد أنه لما كفر أخاه فكأنه كفر نفسه, as if he called himself a disbeliever. لأنه كفر من هو مثله أو لأنه فعل مثل فعل الكافر لأنه لا يكفر المسلم إلا كافر يعتقد بطلان دين الإسلام. So it is as if he has belied himself. He has declared himself a disbeliever. And so one should essentially, if you take this meaning, then it's basically saying that if you're thinking of declaring someone else a disbeliever, then think, how easy would it be for you to declare yourself a disbeliever? And use that same level of caution before declaring someone else a disbeliever. Right? How many excuses would you give yourself? How many chances would you give yourself? And give that same discretion to to your brother. وقيل إنه محمول على الخوارج المكفرين للمؤمنين. وهذا على قول من يكفر أهل القبلة والجمهور على خلافه. And this is according to those who say the Khawarij are not Muslims, then they would say that this is referring to the Khawarij specifically. Right? And this is a weaker, obviously this is a weak opinion. And that's why it says وَالْجُمْهُرُ عَلَى خِلَافِهِ.
Sheikh, can you clarify that last part? So
there's there may be a minority that say the Khawarij have left the fold of Islam. And so they would understand this to be that they are that this hadith is referring to the Khawarij, and that this would be the means of them leaving Islam. Right? This would be a proof that they have left the fold of Islam. But the majority of Ahl Sunnah, and the accepted opinion in all the schools, all the three schools of Ahl Sunnah, is that they would be, as far as I understand, that they would be Muslim, but they would be considered from Ahlul Bid'ah, and they have Bid'ah in their beliefs, and they would be sinful people, but they would not be considered disbelievers.
makes sense. Okay. Were you saying the weak opinion was the opinion that they are outside the fold of Islam, or are you saying it's a weak hadith?
No, I'm saying it's a weak opinion that they're outside the fold of Islam.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
قال باب في من يموت وهو يشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة قال حدثنا الليث عن ابن عجلان عن محمد بن يحيى بن حبان عن أبي محيريز عن الصنابحي عن عبادة بن الصامت رضي الله عنه وعنهم أنه قال دخلت عليه وهو في الموت فبكيت فقال مهلا لم تبكي فوالله لئن استشهدت لأشهدن لك ولئن شفعت لأشفعن لك ولئن استطعت لأنفعنك ثم قال والله ما من حديث سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لكم فيه خير إلا حدثتكموه إلا حديثا واحدا وسأحدثكموه اليوم وقد أحيط بنفسي سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من شهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله حرم الله عليه النار. وفي الباب عن أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وطلحة وجابر وابن عمر وزيد بن خالد رضي الله عنهم. والصنابحي هو عبد الرحمن بن عسيلة أبو عبد الله. هذا حديث حسن صحيح غريب من هذا الوجه. وقد روي عن الزهري أنه سئل عن قول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قال لا إله إلا الله دخل الجنة فقال إنما كان هذا في أول الإسلام قبل نزول الفرائض والأمر والنهي. ووجه هذا الحديث عند بعض أهل العلم أن أهل التوحيد سيدخلون الجنة وإن عذبوا في النار بذنوبهم فإنهم لا يخلدون في النار. وقد روي عن ابن مسعود وأبي ذر وعمران بن حسين وجابر بن عبد الله وابن عباس وأبي سعيد الخدري وأنس رضي الله عنهم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال سيخرج قوم من النار من أهل التوحيد ويدخلون الجنة. وهكذا روي عن سعيد بن جبير وإبراهيم النخعي وغير واحد من التابعين في تفسير هذه الآية ربما يود الذين كفروا لو كانوا مسلمين. قالوا إذا أخرج أهل التوحيد من النار وأدخلوا الجنة يود الذين كفروا لو كانوا مسلمين.
Okay. So, right, so over here, Sunabihi narrates from Ubadah ibn Samit أنه قال الصنابحي said دخلت عليه وهو في الموت. Sunabihi says, I entered upon Ubadah ibn Samit and he was on his deathbed. So I began to cry. So he said, Mahlan, calm down. Why are you crying? He said, Well, Allah, if I could give my life, then I would. If I were to give asked to give testimony, then I would testify for you. And if I were allowed to give intercession, then I would intercede on your behalf. And if I was able to, then I would benefit you. Then he said, by Allah, there's no hadith I heard from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which there's good for you except I narrated it to you except for one hadith, and I will narrate that to you today. And it has encompassed me. وَقَدْ أُحِيطَ بِنَفْسِي سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, say, whoever testifies that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is the Messenger of Allah, then the hellfire is forbidden upon him. Right? These types of hadith, the Sahaba were hesitant to narrate it, not because of the hadith itself, but because of they're worried that people would misunderstand it and misuse the hadith. And the purpose of this hadith is to give hope, but at the same time, as believers, we should hope for al-Firdaus. We should hope and aim to enter Jannah immediately. And so they would be hesitant to share it so as to not make people lazy, knowing that as long as they believe, they'll enter the hellfire, because no one is, as long as they believe, they'll enter Jannah, because no one can guarantee their faith, right? No one can guarantee that they will remain on their faith until the last day, until their last breath. Sunabihi, his name is, he clarifies that he's Abdul Rahman ibn Usayla, and his kunya is Abu Abdullah. And so he mentions two explanations. The first one is two explanations of this hadith, right? So the first is of Az-Zuhri, that this was talking about the beginning of Islam, that this was sufficient for someone to enter Jannah before all the obligations came, right? And so this isn't saying that someone who's engaged in sins will not enter Jannah, but he's saying that this is talking about someone who will enter Jannah immediately. And so this is those people who simply said La ilaha illallah and they believed before there were other obligations. And so that is the opinion of Imam Zuhri. And you have the other opinion, which is that this is talking about al-khulud finna, being in the hellfire forever. That everyone who believes in Tawheed, they will eventually enter Jannah, even if they are punished in the hellfire for their sins, because they will not be in there forever. And this ayah, this is talking about that situation when those people will be they will be taken out from the hellfire. The next hadith is known as Hadith al-Bitaqa. And this is also, I believe, a musalsal narration, either musalsal bil-Dimashqiyin or musalsal bil-Misriyin or something along those lines, if I'm not mistaken, but I have to double check that. But this is known as hadith. This next hadith is known as Hadith al-Bitaqa, about the weight of La ilaha illallah on the Day of Judgment. Go ahead, continue.
Sheikh, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I might have missed it. Who is the alayhi? So دخلت عليه وهو في الموت.
So over here in your book, you'll see numbers underneath, right? So you'll see a 3 underneath Funabihi, and then you'll see a 3 under Annahu, a 3 under Qala, and then you'll see a 6 under Ubadah, and 6 under Alayhi, and 6 under
Mhm.
Huwa. So that tells you what the pronouns are referring back to. That's what the purpose of those numbers are. So
Where's the reference though? I don't see it in my book.
you don't have it in your book?
No, I have the 6. Where's the 6 in the footnote though?
No, not in the footnote. Not in the footnote, just in the book. If you look
Oh,
at the book, under Sunabihi, there's a 3, right?
right.
And then you see Annahu, under Annahu, there's a 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that Annahu is mean Anna Sunabihi.
Okay.
And then you have the 6 under Ubadah ibn Samit, right? So
That's what I can find. Give me 1 second. Ubadah.
عن عبادة بن الصامت, as in just written underneath in the بين السطور, between the 2 lines, not in the footnotes.
Yes. But I see the 6 for Alayhi. Where's the 6 for Ubadah?
You don't see a 6 underneath the name عبادة بن الصامت? So this is how I have it. I don't know if it's gonna show up backwards, but
oh, okay, I see it. Never mind. Yeah, it's earlier. I see it. Okay.
yeah, so that's telling you, that helps, that's there to help you figure out the marji' of the dhamir, where the pronouns are referring back to. So alayhi, so this is saying that Sunabihi says that I entered upon Ubadatun Samit while he was on his deathbed.
Makes sense. And then when it's quoting the other opinions, like Imam Zuhri, rahimahullah, are these, so like when we talk about fiqh, right, like and reconciling between different hadith to get to to get to the ahkam, we talk about those opinions, right? For example, Imam Abu Hanifa, etc., being rooted in other narrations or other proofs, right? Like that's how they come. When we see this, for example, like in the hadith opinions about how to interpret that hadith, is this also based on other contexts? Like, or is it like how do we?
So essentially, they're trying to contextualize it, reconcile between this and other hadith, right? And so these are different ways of reconciling and different ways of understanding the hadith. Right? That this is so this goes back to the ways you do jama' bayn al-nusus, the way you reconcile between contradictory narration. So Imam Zuhri is essentially saying that this is mansukh, right? And so he's giving preference to nasakh instead of jama', right? Instead of reconciling between the 2 hadith, he's saying that this is just mansukh, and those hadith that mention that sinful believers will enter the hellfire, those are nasikh to this.
Because I remember there was another hadith we covered, I think it was Sheikh Farhan, or else where I don't remember the specifics. I think it was the hadith on wudu, and like I don't remember if it was about limbs being late, but the whole commentary was, it talked about a specific reward, but it wasn't from the Prophet ﷺ, right? Like the hadith wasn't directly from the Prophet ﷺ. I think it was attributed to companions. So then my question was like, if it's talking about a reward or it's likening it to a reward, is that through like ilham? Is it just kind of a metaphor?
No, so there's 2 parts. That hadith, I think you misunderstand. There's isbal, the hadith of isbal al-wudu,
Yes.
right? You have the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says talks about the rewards of isbal al-wudu, and then you have a particular practice and a particular understanding of isbal from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, if I'm not mistaken, where he would wash beyond the limbs, and he would wash like till the mid of the calf, if I'm not mistaken, and wash up the arms extra. So he'd wash extra, and that was his understanding of what isbal meant. Whereas others would take isbal to mean just doing the wudu properly and completely with all the sunan and adab, right? So it's an understanding of the hadith which Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu particularly had, but it's not the reward is for isbal. It's just a difference in understanding what isbal particularly is.
Got it.
Same thing over here. This difference of opinion. This opinion of Zuhri is not saying that sinful believers will never enter Jannah, but he's saying that this hadith is talking about dukhul awwali, entering Jannah immediately. And so in that sense, this is talking of this would be mansukh. So it's the difference in understanding what dakhala al-Jannah particularly means in this case. Go ahead. Continue.
وبه قال حدثنا سويد بن نصر قال أخبرنا ابن المبارك عن ليث بن سعد قال حدثني عامر بن يحيى عن أبي عبد الرحمن بن المعافري ثم الحبلي قال سمعت عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما يقول سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الله سيخلص رجلا من أمتي على رؤوس الخلائق يوم القيامة فينشر عليه 99 سجلا كل سجل مثل مد البصر ثم يقول أتنكر من هذا شيئا الظلمك كتبت الحافظون يقول لا يا ربي فيقول أفلك عذر فيقول لا لا يا ربي فيقول بلى إن لك عندنا حسنة وإنه لا ظلم عليك اليوم فيخرج بطاقة فيها أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله فيقول احضر وزنك فيقول يا ربي ما هذه البطاقة مع هذه السجلات فقال فإنك لا تظلم قال فتوضع السجلات في كفة والبطاقة في كفة فطاشت السجلات وثقلت البطاقة ولا يثقل مع اسم الله شيء هذا حديث حسن غريب وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة قال حدثنا ابن لهيعة عن عامر بن يحيى بهذا الإسناد نحوه بمعناه والبطاقة القطعة.
So bitaqa is in modern Arabic would be a card, but like a piece of paper, essentially, a note. And so Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu narrates that I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say that Allah will distinguish a man from my ummah over all of creation on the Day of Judgment. And so 99 scrolls will be laid out in front of him. Every scroll will go to the distance as far as the eye can see. Will spread out as far as the eye can see. And then he will say, do you reject anything from this? Did my scribes who preserve this, did they wrong you? And he will say, no, O my Lord. And then he will say, do you have any excuse? And he will say, no, O my Lord. And then he will say, of course, you have bala, meaning you do have something. You have a good deed with us, and there's no oppression upon you today. So a small piece will be taken out, a small piece of paper will be taken out, and in it is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And he will say, Uhdur waznaka, bring your scale. And so he will say, oh Lord, this is a piece of paper with these scrolls. How are they gonna be equal? So he said, you will not be oppressed. So the scrolls will be placed on one side and the piece of paper on the other side, and the scrolls will be lightened and they'll go up. They'll be light, and the piece of paper will be heavy, and nothing can be heavy with the name of Allah. Nothing can be heavier than the name of Allah. And so this is a hadith that shows the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a very hopeful hadith. Regarding this, he has a long footnote over here in the Hashia. From the Hashia of Imam Suyuti. Let's read a little bit of it. قال القرطبي في التذكرة. This is not the famous Mufassir. It's another Qurtubi in his book التذكرة في أحوال موتى وأمور الآخرة. I believe that's the title. Talking about death and the hereafter. And so it says ليست هذه شهادة التوحيد لأن من شأن الميزان أن يوضع في كفته. كفته. Kiffa is the scale, the a side of a scale, right? بشيء وفي الأخرى ضده فتوضع الحسنات في كفة والسيئات في كفة فهذا غير مستحيل لأن العبد قد يأتي بهما جميعا ويستحيل أن يأتي بالكفر والإيمان جميعا عبد واحد حتى يوضع الإيمان في كفة والكفر في كفة. فلذلك استحال أن توضع شهادة التوحيد في الميزان. وأما بعدما آمن العبد فالنطق منه بلا إله إلا الله حسنة توضع في الميزان مع سائر الحسنات. So he said over here, this is not the testimony of Tawheed, because essentially he's saying that you can't put, it's not Iman and Kufr that's going to be put, but it's going to be good deeds and bad deeds. So it's not talking about one's initial, one enter the Shahada that enters them into the fold of Islam, but it's talking about sins and good deeds, essentially, right? And so this is after one believes and then they say La ilaha illallah, then the statement of La ilaha illallah, not one entering the fold of Islam, but that statement of La ilaha illallah, that is considered a good deed that is placed on the scales with all of the good deeds. So it's talking about an utterance of La ilaha illallah, not one entering into the fold of Islam. قاله الحكم الترمذي في نوادر الأصول وقال غيره إن النطق منه بها زيادة ذكر على Anyways, this is going into a more nuanced discussion, and we can leave this out for now. Let's move forward. The next hadith is talking about the different sects of Judaism and Christianity and how the Muslims will also divide into sects. This is talking about right. This is first of all, there's a whole discussion on whether this is authentic or not, and then even if you take it as authentic, it's still its understanding is misused by many, but it's not meant to be used to try to take people out of the fold of Islam, but rather to understand that there will be people that will have deviant beliefs, and so to be wary of falling into those things. Okay. Afraz, why don't you read from here?
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال باب افتراق هذه الأمة. وبه قال حدثنا الحسين بن حريث أبو عمار قال حدثنا الفضل بن موسى عن محمد بن عمرو عن أبي سلمة عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال تفرقت اليهود على 71 فرقة أو 72 فرقة والنصارى مثل ذلك وتفترق أمتي على 73 فرقة. وفي الباب عن سعد وعبد الله بن عمرو وعوف بن مالك رضي الله عنهم حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه حديث حسن صحيح. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا أبو داود الحفري عن سفيان عن عبد الرحمن بن زياد عن ابن أنعم الإفريقي عن عبد الله بن يزيد عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما وعنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليأتين على أمتي ما أتى على بني إسرائيل حذو النعل بالنعل حتى إن كان منهم من أتى أمه أمه علانية لكان في أمتي من يصنع ذلك. وإن بني إسرائيل تفرقت على 72 ملة وتفترق أمتي على 73 ملة كلهم في النار إلا ملة واحدة. قالوا من هي يا رسول الله قال ما أنا عليه وأصحابي. هذا حديث حسن غريب مفسر لا نعرفه مثل ذلك إلا من هذا الوجه.
So ما أنا عليه وأصحابي, this is where the term أهل السنة والجماعة comes from, right? أهل السنة ما أنا عليه, والجماعة referring to the جماعة of the Sahaba وأصحابي. And so this is the basis for that title, أهل السنة والجماعة. And أهل السنة is the three schools of anyone who follows any of the three schools of belief, the Ash'ari, the Maturidi, or the Athari school.
Continue.
Over here, any questions on the wording of the hadith? Okay, continue.
Chef, sorry.
Yeah.
What does حذو النعل بالنعل mean?
حذو النعل بالنعل. The amount of one shoe on one foot, like footstep by footstep. Like even if they do something, like they move one step, you'll follow them in that one step.
Okay, makes sense.
So he says حذو in the footnote over here. حذو التقدير القطع والقطع. التقدير the amount.
قال حدثنا الحسن بن عرفة قال حدثنا إسماعيل بن عياش عن يحيى بن أبي عمرو عمرو السيباني عن عبد الله بن ديلمي قال سمعت عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما وعنهم يقول سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الله تبارك وتعالى خلق خلقه في ظلمة فألقى عليهم من نوره فمن أصابه ذلك النور اهتدى ومن أخطأه ضل. فلذلك أقول جف القلم على علم الله. هذا حديث حسن. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان وقال حدثنا أبو أحمد قال حدثنا سفيان عن أبي إسحاق عن عمرو بن ميمون عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أتدري ما حق الله على العباد فقلت الله ورسوله أعلم قال إن حقه عليهم أن يعبدوه ولا يشركوا به شيئا قال فتدري ما حقهم على الله إذا فعلوا ذلك قال الله ورسوله أعلم قال ألا يعذبهم. هذا حديث حسن صحيح وقد روي من غير وجه عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا أبو داود أنبأنا شعبة عن قال أنبأنا شعبة عن حبيب بن أبي ثابت وعبد العزيز بن رفيع والأعمش كلهم سمعوا زيد بن وهب عن أبي ذر رضي الله عنه وعنهم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أتاني جبرائيل فبشرني أنه من مات لا يشرك بالله شيئا دخل الجنة. قلت وإن زنى وإن سرق قال نعم. هذا حديث حسن صحيح وفي الباب عن أبي الدرداء رضي الله عنه.
So over here, إن الله تعالى خلق الخلق في ظلمة. The footnote he says أي الثقلين من الجن والإنس الملائكة في ظلمة أي كائنين في ظلمة النفس نفس الأمارة بالسوء المجبولة بالشهوات. المجبولة right, you say جبلة, it's innately inclined towards something, right? It's made to be, it's innately made to be a certain way, right? المجبولة بالشهوات الرديئة والأهواء المضلة. So they're created with this nafs, which by default is going to command towards evil, because it is innately it is inclined towards um, lowly desires and whims that are misguiding. قوله فألقى عليه أي رش عليهم شيئا من نوره. قوله من نوره صفة محذوف أي شيئا منه، ومن التبيين أو للتبعيض أو زائدة. والمراد منه نور الإيمان والمعرفة والإيقان والطاعة والإحسان. So there are those desires and those inclinations towards sin. Those are a natural part of being human, and that is the test that we have. And that's why he says not angels, because the angels, they are لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم. They don't have the ability to sin. فمن أصابه ذلك النور اهتدى ومن أخطأ ضل. فلذلك أقول right, for the fact that what's decreed is going to happen. I say جف القلم على علم الله. Right, this is metaphorical. He said, right, كناية عن الفراغ. That the over here when it says علم الله, it's talking about the taqdeer of Allah, right? Because the ilm of Allah, in the technical sense, is azali. It is pre-eternal, right? Whereas the taqdeer is not. The taqdeer is something that was written, and so it's talking about the taqdeer of Allah has written down the taqdeer based on His knowledge. Right, and then you have over here coming the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, right? The hadith where the Prophet says that Jibreel alayhi salam came to me and gave me good news, right? That the people, as long as you have iman, you will enter Jannah. Even if someone falls under, is in one of these sects, they still, if they haven't engaged in anything that takes them out of the fold of Islam, they haven't, and they are still Muslims, they will eventually still enter into Jannah. And so Abu Dhar read this hadith, right? Abu Dhar radiallahu anhu is confused. He says, قُلْتُ وَإِنْ زَنَا وَإِنْ سَرَقَ. That because he knows how severe the sin it is, and potentially because of the hadith, لا يزني الزاني حين يزني وهو مؤمن, right? Of the hadith that came earlier, that he was confused about that. And so the Prophet clarifies that even if they engage in such major sins. The next section is أبواب العلم عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Inshallah, you can get started.
قال باب العلم عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وبيقال باب إذا قال باب إذا أراد الله بعبد خيرا فقهه في الدين. وبيقال حدثنا علي بن حجر قال أخبرنا إسماعيل بن جعفر قال أخبرني عبد الله بن سعيد بن أبي هند عن أبيه عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما وعنهم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. وفي الباب عن عمر وأبي هريرة ومعاوية رضي الله عنهم. هذا حديث حسن صحيح.
يفقه في الدين over here means gives him understanding of the religion overall. Right? Right? You have in the footnote he mentions quoting from Ad-Darimi. Ad-Darimi in his Jami', also known as more famously known as Sunan. He has a big muqaddimah where part of it talks about the virtues of knowledge. And so in that he has a statement from Hassan al-Basri where he says, قلت للحسن يوما في شيء هكذا قال الفقهاء قال ويحك ما رأيت هل رأيت فقيها إنما الفقيه الزاهد في الدنيا الراغب في الآخرة البصير بأمر دينه المداوم على عبادة ربه. So fiqh is not just knowledge, but it's knowledge that leads to action. Someone who is indifferent to the dunya, someone who is inclined to the hereafter, someone who is insightful in his religious affairs, and someone who is consistent on the worship of his Lord. And then he says, وفي رواية إنما الفقيه من انفتحت عين قلبه فنظر إلى ربه, that the eyes of his heart are opened up and he looks at his Lord, right? Talking about ihsan, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه, in that sense. ويؤيده ما في رواية من يريد الله بخير يفقهه في الدين ويلهمه رشده, رواه أبو نعيم في الحلية عن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه. And so it gives him understanding of the religion such that not only does he know things, but he practices upon what he knows. Continue.
قال باب فضل طلب العلم. وبه قال حدثنا محمود بن غيلان قال حدثنا أبو أسامة عن الأعمش عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له طريقا إلى الجنة. هذا حديث حسن. وبه قال حدثنا نصر بن علي قال حدثنا خالد بن يزيد العتكي عن أبي جعفر الرازي عن الربيع بن أنس عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من خرج في طلب العلم فهو في سبيل الله حتى يرجع. هذا حديث حسن غريب ورواه بعضهم لم يرفعه.
Right. So he said in the footnote, قوت المبتدئين, the footnote Suyuti, quoting from the sharih of المصابيح المظهري, وجه مشابهة طلب العلم بالمجاهدة في سبيل الله. This is comparing seeking knowledge to jihad في سبيل الله. Because أنه إحياء الدين وإذلال الشيطان وإتعاب النفس وكسر الهواء واللذة. That it's the revival of the religion, and the purpose of jihad as well is إعلاء كلمة الله, right? Also, and so they serve similar purposes. And إذلال الشيطان, disgracing the shaitan, right? And tiring oneself and breaking one's desires. And so they have similar outcomes, and so that's why they're being compared.
Sheikh, why does this come in the chapter of, obviously it's related to seeking knowledge, but is the heading, is it العلم عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم? So okay, I guess it's just saying the chapter of
The
knowledge.
chapter of knowledge from the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, everything related to knowledge from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi
It's
Wasallam.
not his knowledge, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's just talking about knowledge.
From, an over here means from.
Yeah. Okay. بقال حدثنا محمد بن حميد الرازي قال حدثنا محمد بن المعلى قال حدثنا زياد بن خيثمة عن أبي داود عن عبد الله بن سخبرة عن سخبرة رضي الله عنه عنهم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من طلب العلم كان كفارة لما مضى. هذا حديث ضعيف الإسناد. أبو داود اسمه نفيع
نفيع
نفيع الأعمى يضعف في
التغاء ساكن نفيعون الأعمى.
نفيع الأعمى يضعف في الحديث ولا يعرف
So ولا يعرف or ولا نعرف.
لعبد الله بن سخبرة كبير شيء ولا لأبيه.
So he's saying that this is a weaker hadith. Abu Dawud over here is not the famous Abu Dawud at-Tayalisi, but Nufay' al-A'ma, who is considered weak in hadith. And so this makes this hadith weak. And similarly, he's narrating from a sahabi who don't narrate much. So that's also, and there's this narration isn't necessarily corroborated. Regardless, he brings this because this is suitable for something. This is suitable to be used in virtues. It can be hoped that it is a means of one's sins being forgiven.
باب ما جاء في كتمان العلم. وبه قال حدثنا أحمد بن بديل بن ابن قريش اليامي الكوفي قال حدثنا عبد الله ابن نمير عن عمارة بن زاذان عن علي بن الحكم عن عطاء عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنهم قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من سئل عن علم علمه ثم كتمه ألجم يوم القيامة بلجام من نار. وفي الباب عن جابر وعبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنه حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه حديث حسن.
This is a hadith, right? This is a hadith for people that are qualified. If someone knows something, they're not qualified to share it. They've learned something, but they haven't learned it in depth. They don't fully know it, and this wouldn't apply to them. This is someone who is actually knowledgeable of something, he actually understands it. Right? These days we have too many people who don't really know much, and they share things, and then they misrepresent things. And so, alimahu means that someone actually fully understands it, not that someone has just barely learned it. Uljima means to be bridled. The thing you would put on a horse, essentially, right? In the horse's mouth, right? So you're bridled with the bridle of fire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
قال باب ما جاء في الاستيصاء بمن يطلب العلم. وبه قال حدثنا سفيان بن وكيع قال حدثنا أبو داود الحفري عن سفيان عن أبي هارون قال كنا نأتي أبا سعيد رضي الله عنه وعنهم فيقول مرحبا بوصية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الناس لكم تبعا وإن رجالا يأتونكم من أقطار الأرض يتفقهون في الدين فإذا أتوكم فاستوصوا بهم خيرا. قال علي بن عبد الله قال يحيى بن سعيد كان شعبة يضعف أبا هارون العبدي قال يحيى وما زال ابن عون يروي عن أبي هارون العبدي حتى مات وأبو هارون اسمه عمارة بن جوين. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة.
This is again a weaker narration. Because of Abu Harun al-Abdi, but there's a difference of opinion on its weakness because Ibn Awn, right? Ibn Awn was more trusting of those narrations. Shu'bah was a little bit stricter, and he considered it to be weak. And Yahya ibn Sa'id ibn Qattan, he's narrating that to show that that's what he. So Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, he's narrating both of those positions. Right? And then you have Marhaban bi wasiyati Rasulullah. Welcome to the inheritance of the Messenger of Allah. Right, referring to the knowledge that the knowledge of the religion is the inheritance of the prophets, because the prophets do not leave behind money as inheritance. Continue.
Can you translate the hadith, Sheikh?
Okay. Um, Abu Harun says that we used to come to Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anh, and he would say, "Welcome to the inheritance of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Um, and um, Indeed, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The people are followers of you. Inna nasa taba'un lakum." Um, they will follow you, and men will come to you from the corners of the earth, from the different regions of the earth, you can say, seeking understanding in the religion. So when they come to you, then deal with them in goodness. استوصوا بهم خيرا. الاستيصاء قبول الوصية. And then take this bequest to deal with them in goodness, essentially. He said استيصاء قبول الوصية. Take this command, take this take this command, this bequest to deal with them in goodness. And then Ali ibn Abdullah, let's double check who Ali ibn Abdullah is. Over here. No, yeah, I'll have to double check who Ali ibn Abdullah is. Let's move forward.
قال باب ما جاء في ذهاب العلم، وبه قال حدثنا هارون بن إسحاق الهمداني قال حدثنا عبدة بن سليمان عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه عن عبد الله ابن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما عنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من الناس ولكن يقبض العلم بقبض العلماء.
Wait, do you read the second hadith as well?
I think so. I'll read it again.
I don't think you did.
Okay. Oh no, you paused me in the middle. وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة قال حدثنا نوح بن قيس عن أبي هارون العبدي عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه عنهم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يأتيكم رجال من قبل المشرق يتعلمون فإذا جاءوكم فاستوصوا بهم خيرا. قال فكان أبو سعيد رضي الله عنه إذا رآنا قال مرحبا بوصية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وهذا حديث لا نعرفه إلا من حديث أبي هارون العبدي عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه.
Okay. So it's similar hadith. Again, it's narrated from Abu Harun al-Abdi, and so it's right. It has the same. It has a similar chain, essentially, right? And so it has a similar chain. Right? Shu'bah said that كان شعبة يضاعف أبا هارون العبدي, and so it's also weak in the same way due to that same narrator. Continue.
قال باب ما جاء في ذهاب العلم. وبه قال حدثنا هارون بن إسحاق الحمداني وقال حدثنا عبدة بن سليمان عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهم قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من الناس ولكن يقبض العلم بقبض العلماء حتى إذا لم يترك عالما اتخذ الناس رؤوسا جهالا فسئلوا فأتوا بغير علم فضلوا. وفي الباب عن عائشة وزياد بن لبيد رضي الله عنهما. هذا حديث حسن صحيح. وقد روى هذا الحديث الزهري عن عروة عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما عن عروة عن عائشة رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل هذا.
So over here, this hadith, it's a famous hadith, right, about the end of times. Do you guys need me to translate or
I don't think so.
huh?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you guys covered this in the Talibin. It comes in the end of the Talibin. But you probably covered it in Mishkat. And so this is a famous hadith. And again, this is a reminder for us as well, first and foremost, that we should not be we should not fall into either of these categories. Right? We shouldn't, um, right? We shouldn't be the people who are taking rules and juhalan, and at the same time, we should not be the ones. We should not be uh, those ignorant leaders. Right? Um, and so, first and foremost, it's a reminder to us, and then afterwards, also, we have to be. We have the best opinion of others. We do husn al-dhan, but we don't be naive, and we also uh, judge everything based on right what we know from the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what we know from the earlier generations. Continue.
وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن عبد الرحمن أخبرنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثني معاوية بن صالح عن عبد الرحمن ابن جبير بن نفير عن أبيه جبير بن ابن نفير عن أبي الدرداء رضي الله عنه وعنهم قال كنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فشخص ببصره إلى السماء ثم قال هذا أوان يختلس العلم من الناس حتى لا يقدر منه على شيء فقال زياد بن لبيد الأنصاري رضي الله عنه كيف يختلس منا وقد قرأنا القرآن فوالله لنقرأنه ولنقرئنه النساء أنا وأبناءنا قال ثكلتك أمك يا زياد إن كنت لأعدك من فقهاء أهل المدينة هذه التوراة والإنجيل عند اليهود والنصارى فماذا تغني عنهم قال جبير فلقيت عبادة بن الصامت رضي الله عنه فقلت ألا تسمع ما يقول أخوك أبو الدرداء رضي الله عنه فأخبرته بالذي قال أبو الدرداء رضي الله عنه قال صدق أبو الدرداء إن شئت لأحدثنك بأول علم يرفع من الناس الخشوع يوشك أن تدخل مسجد الجامع فلا ترى فيه رجلا خاشعا هذا حديث حسن غريب ومعاوية بن صالح ثقة عند أهل الحديث ولا نعلم أحدا تكلم فيه غير يحيى بن سعيد القطان وقد روي عن معاوية بن صالح نحو هذا وروى بعضهم هذا الحديث عن عبد الرحمن بن جبير بن نفير عن أبيه عن عوف بن مالك رضي الله عنهم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم.
So over here, Abu Darda radiallahu anhu narrates that we were with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he raised his eyes to the sky. He looked towards the sky. Then he said, "This is the time where knowledge will be taken from the people, will be snatched from the people." يختلف يختطف ويسلب بسرعة. والمراد علم الوحي. What's meant over here is the knowledge of wahi, sacred knowledge. فكأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم ما نظر إلى السماء كشف باقتراب أجله. He was told that he was to pass away soon. حتى لا يقدروا منه على شيء, until they're not able to attain any of it. And so Ziyad ibn Labid al-Ansari said, how can it be taken from us when we read the Quran? And so he said, by Allah, لا نقرأنه, by Allah, we will read it and we will teach it to our women and children, to our families. ثكلتك أمك, may your mother lose you, may your mother bereave your loss. O Ziyad, that's a Uh, uh, that's a statement of ta'ajjub, of amazement. That how can you not understand? Over here, this in is in mukhaffafa, thaqila. This is an example where it's not coming with illa after it. And over here, it's not coming with illa after, but it's still mukhaffafa, min al-thaqila, min al-muthaqqala. Indeed, I used to consider you, I considered you from the fuqaha of the people of Medina. This Torah and Injil are with the Jews and the Christians, so how does it benefit them? And so Jubair, right, the narrator, Jubair ibn Nufayr, the narrator from Abu Darda, he says, فَلَقِيتُ عُبَادَةَ بْنَ الصَّامِتِ. I met Ubadah ibn Samit, so I said to him, have you not heard what? Do you not hear what your brother Abu Darda radiallahu anhu says? So I informed him of what Abu Darda radiallahu anhu said, and he said, Abu Darda radiallahu anhu said the truth. If you want, I will tell you, I will narrate to you the first aspect of knowledge that will be lifted from the people. He said, al-khushu', to worship Allah with awe and fear of Him. It is near that you will enter Masjid al-Jami'. Jami' historically was the main masjid, right, where Jum'ah would take place, and so on. Jum'ah would not take place at every single masjid. There would be smaller masajid, and then you'd have the main masjid where Jum'ah and other things would take place. And so you'll enter a large masjid, and you will not see a single man who has khushu'. And so, right, he's highlighting that ilm is not just information, but it's the practice of that knowledge that you have. And then he says, هذا حديث حسن غريب. Muawiyah ibn Salih is thiqa, except for Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, who criticized him. But everyone else considers him to be authentic. And this is a similar hadith is narrated from Muawiyah ibn Salih. So Muawiyah ibn Salih narrates this, and he narrates a similar hadith from a different chain as well. And then there's another narration where instead of being narrated from Abu Darda, this is narrated from Auf bin Malik radiallahu anhu. So just highlighting the different chains. And we'll stop here. And then Afraz, if you can go ahead with your presentation.
So, one second. In the document. I had Aisha radiallahu anha. For name and lineage, I didn't mention it in Isaba because I think it was linking back to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhum. So I just have her father was Abdullah bin Uthman, which was Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and her mother was Ruman bint Amir bin.
We still want the lineage, because where does the lineage of the?
Where do I find it? I just have to go back to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh?
Exactly.
Okay, I didn't do that. I have to go.
Yeah, so you go back, because we want to, if it's Quraysh, if someone from Quraysh, then it's important to know where their lineage meets with the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ. How are they related to the Prophet ﷺ? Because all of Quraysh is related at some point.
Okay.
So that's why it would be important to know. If it's from the Khazraj, you want to know. If from the Ansar, you know if they're also Khazraj, what tribe they're from, and whatnot. So that would be the reason know the lineage.
And would he be under Abdullah bin Uthman or Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu?
I'm guessing it would be under Abu Bakr, but it might be under Abdullah bin Uthman as well.
Okay,
You have
I'll
to
check.
look at both. If you look at Abdullah bin Uthman, if it's not, yeah, I don't recall. But if it's not going to mention the full biography in both, it's just going to say, if you look at Abdullah bin Uthman, it might say, go look in Kuna, the section on the kunyas, and look under Abu Bakr, or it may come up and it may have it there. And then when it comes to Kuna, then I'll say we already discussed it earlier.
Okay. When did she accept Islam? It didn't specify, but it said when she was born. So if she was born 4 or 5 years after the Prophet ﷺ's Risala, then she was born into Islam because she was born after Abu Bakr radiallahu anh had already accepted.
Mhm.
Her role,
Right. She says them I don't remember my parents ever being not being Muslim. Continue.
so she was born 4 or 5 years after the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood, and it is authentically narrated in the Sahih that he ﷺ married her when she was 6 or 7, with the consensus that she had completed her 6th year and entered her 7th. And then I think in the book it also mentioned that when she was about 9 when they formally consummated the marriage. Her nickname was Abdullah, and some said that she bore the Prophet ﷺ a child who passed away in infancy, but that was not proven. It's more likely that it was in reference to Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, who was her nephew. She was known for her knowledge, especially in fiqh, medicine, poetry. Many of the senior Sahaba radiallahu anhum would seek her knowledge, and then it's specified especially for inheritance laws. And then it quoted some of the hadith about the special status that she had with the Prophet ﷺ. Ammar bin Yasir once said to a man who insulted Aisha radiallahu anha, to get away, and basically insulted him and said that this is the Prophet ﷺ's wife in Jannah. And another narration in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said that Aisha radiallahu anha is my wife in Jannah. She narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, she narrated from other companions, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, Umar radiallahu anh, Fatima radiallahu anha, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anh, and many others. And after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, she was one of the senior scholars that taught many of the companions and Tabi'een. Some of her famous students were, it says amongst the companions who narrated from her, so I guess you could call them her students too. So Umar radiallahu anh, Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anh, Abu Huraira, Abu Musa, Zayd bin Khalid ibn Abbas, Rabi'a bin Amr al-Jurashi, Abdullah bin Amr bin Rabi'a, Abdullah bin Harith bin Nawfal, and many others radiallahu anhum. And she passed away in the year 58 after Hijri on the 17th of Ramadan in Makkah and buried in al-Baqi'. That's what I have.
In terms of the other thing that I want to bring up, so I mentioned last time, I think, I want you to update, to upload your notes to Google Classroom. I think I created an assignment, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I created assignment for that. Also, we need to have a midterm. So we'll go until the midterm. If last week was supposed to be midterm week, we're a little bit behind on, I guess, a little bit delayed. But we'll have a midterm until where we stopped today, or we'll say until أبواب الإيمان, until the end of أبواب الإيمان. This is the midterm. When do you guys want the midterm? Do you guys, is next week gonna be fine for you guys?
Should be fine. I'm traveling the rest
Yeah.
of this.
Okay. And it'll be a take-home midterm, so it's not gonna, we'll still have class next week, but I'll post it. I'll post it on Monday, and then from after class until and then it'll be due before the following class.
Oh, inshallah.
So I'll post it on the 28th, and then it'll be due on November 4th. So I can ask if there's any. Essentially, it will be translating and voweling, translating and explaining any of the comments that Imam Tirmidhi may make, whether it be about narrators or whether it be about the hadith. So whenever any of those, I may bring a hadith where Imam Tirmidhi has a long comment, and I'll ask you to explain that to me. So those are all, that's all fair game. If he highlights a narrator and he's trying to point out that that narrator is weak, you should be able to explain that to me. If he's trying to highlight that this is a narrator that may have been confused with someone else and is clarifying his name, you highlight that, etc. So those types of things. That is also something that's expected from you on the test. So yeah. Any questions? Okay. Then I will see you guys next week. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام.
Let's get started. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى. سلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Alright, so hopefully you have submitted your midterms. If you didn't, hopefully you let me know that you need an extension. And if you did ask for an extension, do submit it as soon as possible. Definitely before Thanksgiving break, just so it's out of the way. At least for now, the grades are going to be on Google Classroom. They'll be put on Sycamore by the end of the fall semester, and because Sycamore generates the report cards and Google Classroom doesn't, but Google Classroom is much easier to manage. So for now, your grades will be on Google Classroom, unlike previous years where I would actually put it on the submission on your where I would actually put it on the paper itself. That's not the case now. It'll be on Google Classroom, and by the end of the semester, which is basically finals January, you'll have a report card generated on Sycamore. Also, I'll confirm this, but from this year moving forward, we were supposed to basically have Sycamore do report cards for the entire year as opposed to just the fall semester and spring semester. So classes, which obviously are all of the classes from second year onward, that run throughout the fall and spring semester, your grades are basically put together for all 4 exams in my case, right? Midterm and final of the fall and midterm and final of the spring. So all of them combined will basically generate your actual grade versus you getting a separate grade for midterm and final of one, midterm and final of one, and midterm and final of another. All right. This way it just makes it much easier. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Inshallah. All right. We're gonna get started with just some background information of Surah As-Saffat, which is where we are continuing from, right? So page 656.
Sheikh, sorry. For the midterms, this week, you'll still update the grades for these two exams on Google Classroom?
Yeah, so the ones that have been already submitted by anyone, I put the grades on Google Classroom.
Okay.
So you should be able to see them.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, the internet is acting up. Okay, start reading Surah Al-Saffat, and then when it comes back on, we'll be able to just give preliminary information on the surah. Right. So, Surah Al-Saffat, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصافات صفا الملائكة تصف نفوسها في العبادة أو أجنحتها في الهواء تنتظر ما تؤمر به فالزاجرات زجرا الملائكة تزجر السحاب أي تسوقه فالتاليات جماعة قراء القرآن تتلوه ذكرى مصدر من معنى التاليات إن إلهكم لواحد رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما ورب المشارق أي المغارب للشمس لها كل يوم مشرق ومغرب إنا زينا السماء الدنيا بزينة الكواكب أي بضوئها أو بها والإضافة للبيان كقراءة تنوين زينة المبينة بالكواكب وحفظا منصوب بفعل مقدر أي حفظناها بالشهب من كل متعلق بالمقدر شيطان مارد عات خارج عن الطاعة لا يسمعون أي شياطين مستأنف وسماعهم هو في المعنى المحفوظ عنه إلى الملأ الأعلى الملائكة في السماء وعد السماع بإلى لتضمنه معنى الإصغاء وفي القراءة بتشديد الميم والسين أصله يتسمعون أدغمت التاء في السين ويقذفون أي الشياطين بالشهب من كل جانب من آفاق السماء دحورا مصدر دحره أي طرده وأبعده وهو مفعول له ولهم في الآخرة عذاب واصب دائم إلا من خطف الخطفة مصدر أي المرة والاستثناء من ضمير يسمعون أي لا يسمع إلا الشيطان الذي سمع الكلمة من الملائكة فأخذها بسرعة فأتبعه شهاب كوكب مضيء ثاقب يثقبه أو يحرقه أو يخبله. By those angels lined up in ranks. So the angels stand in rows in worship, or their wings in the air, waiting for them to be commanded with something. And those who diligently drive the clouds, meaning the angels drive up the clouds. And those who recite the reminder, a group of reciters, reciting the Quran. Dhikra is the masdar, and it's going back to taliyat, has the same meaning. Surely your God is one. He is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and everything in between, and the Lord of all points of sunrise. So sunrise and sunset. So it has a sunrise and sunset every day. Indeed, we have adorned the lowest heaven with the stars for decoration, meaning with its light or with the stars themselves. And the idafa is to clarify. So, زينة الكواكب, that idafa. كقراءة تنوين زينة. So زينة is read with the tanween. المبينة بالكواكب.
Which
So
is
clarifying the
which is explained as kawakib, which is explained as stars. So inna zayyana sama dunya bi zinatin, and that zina is al kawakib. So it could either be bi zinatil kawakib or bi zinatinil kawakib, and the bi zinatinil kawakib is when you read it with tanween.
okay.
Because when you say bizinatin, you give the noon of the tanween a kasra, which is where the nil sound comes from.
وحفظا, and for protection from every rebellious devil. So حفظا is mansub because of an implied fi'l, meaning we have protected it with stars. And min kulli is connected to the implied fi'l. Shaytan marid, rebellious devil, kharijun, so someone far away from obedience. They cannot listen, meaning the devils cannot listen. So musta'naf, it's like the beginning of the sentence. And they're listening in this meaning. No, I'm not sure what this means.
So وَسِمَاعُهُمْ هُوَ فِي الْمَعْنَى الْمَحْفُوظُ مِنْهُ. So لا يسمعون إلى الملأ الأعلى, meaning, so the sima' here is meant as, they don't hear because it's protected from them, right? If you look at photo number 10, يشير بهذا إلى أن قوله من كل شيطان, right? على حذف مضاف أي من سماع كل شيطان، أو المعنى أن المقصود من الحفظ من كل شيطان هو الحفظ عن سماعهم لا غير. Make sense?
Yeah. They cannot listen to the highest assembly of angels in the sky. And the sama' was made muta'addi to ila.
So ruddiya means complemented, right? So this is basically like, ta'addi, right? Because لا يسمعون إلى الملأ الأعلى. So سماع was connected to إلى الملأ الأعلى لتضمنه معنى الإصغاء, because of its meaning of paying attention. Because it's not talking about listening in general, it's talking specifically about listening to the malaika.
And in al-qira'ah, it's with, so يسمعون, and its original form was يتسمعون, and the ta was like merged into the sin. ويقذفون, for they are pelted from every side, meaning the shayateen are pelted with, from every side, shuhub is stars. So pelted with stars from every side, من آفاق
So,
السماء.
shuhub is more specific. So if you look at number 13, shuhub, ashihabu ka kitabu. So shihabun, shuhubun, kitabun, kutubun, that's what they mean. Shu'latum min narin sati'atin. So it's like a branch of a fire.
Sorry, Sheikh, I need 2 seconds.
Sorry?
I just need like 2 seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. دحورا, fiercely driven away, and the masdar is dahara, meaning so they were expelled or pushed far away, and it is maf'ul lahu. And for them in the hereafter will be an everlasting torment. But whoever manages to stealthily eavesdrop, خطفة is the masdar, meaning al-marra, like time.
Like once.
Once, okay. And the istithna, which is illa, is from the dhamir in يسمعون, meaning no one listens except the shaitan that heard the word from the angels and took it quickly.
Right. So if you look at footnote 14, it says, وَالْخَطْفُ الْإِخْتِلَاسُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ. So this isn't, because there are different types of eavesdropping, right? This is like, what you snatch quickly. This is kind of like 1 or 2 things that you pick up, right? Because even if you were to listen once, even if the shayateen have an opportunity to listen once, that once even is not like they're able to listen as much as they want. But rather, they're able to just, hear something quickly before this fire pursues them, right?
فأتبعه, instantly pursued by a piercing flare. كوكب مضيء, so a bright star. Piercing flare that will burn them or confuse them. Okay. فاستفتهم, استخبر كفار مكة تقريرا أو توبيخا أهم أشد خلقا أم من خلقنا من الملائكة والسماوات والأرضين وما فيهما وفي الإتيان بمن تغلب العقلاء إنا خلقناهم أي أصلهم آدم من طين لازم يلصق باليد المعنى أن خلقهم ضعيف فلا يتكبر بإنكار النبي والقرآن المؤدي إلى هلاكهم اليسير بل للانتقال من غرض إلى آخر وهو الإخبار بحاله وحالهم. عجبت بفتح التاء خطابا للنبي أي من تكذيبهم إياك وهم يسخرون من تعجبك. أم... وإذا ذكروا وعظوا بالقرآن لا يذكرون لا يتعظون. وإذا رأوا آية كانشقاق القمر يستسخرون يستهزئون بها وقالوا فيها إن ما هذا إلا سحر مبين بين. So ask them, O Prophet, ask the disbelievers of Mecca تقريرا to affirm or to rebuke.
Yeah. So this فاستفتهم, this inquire could either be to, state the obvious, taqreer, or it could be about rebuking them, that, there is no other reason as to why you should not accept Tawheed.
Okay. أهم أشد, which is harder to create, them or the other marvels of our creation of angels, and the heavens and the earth and whatever is between them, and وفي الإتيان بمن, and so the man is تغليب العقلاء.
Right? So by having man come, amman khalaqana is to show a predominance of uqala, is to show a predominance of intelligent creation.
إنا خلقناهم, indeed we created them, meaning their origin. Adam from a sticky clay, like something that sticks to the hand, meaning their creation is weak, so they should not be arrogant by rejecting the Prophet and the Quran that will lead to their easy destruction.
Mhm.
The bel here is to move from one objective to the other, and that is informing of their situation. حاله وحالهم. So your situation and theirs.
Mhm.
In fact, you are astonished while they ridicule you. عجبت is addressing the Prophet, meaning you are astonished by their rejection of you while they ridicule you because of your amazement at them. And when they are reminded with the Quran, they are never mindful. They never take lesson. And whenever they see a sign like the splitting of the moon, they make fun of it. They make a mockery out of it, saying this is nothing but pure magic. وقالوا منكرين للبعث أإذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أإنا لمبعوثون. في الهمزتين في الموضعين التحقيق وتسهيل الثانية وإدخال ألف بينهما على الوجهين. أو آباؤنا الأولون بسكون الواو عطفا بأو وبفتحها والهمزة للاستفهام والعطف بالواو والمعطوف عليه محل إن واسمها أو الضمير في لمبعوثون والفاصل همزة الاستفهام. قل نعم تبعثون وأنتم داخرون صاغرون فإنما هي ضمير مبهم يفسره ما بعده. زجرة أي صيحة واحدة فإذا هم أي الخلائق أحياء ينظرون ما يفعل بهم. وقالوا أي الكفار يا للتنبيه ويلنا هلاكنا وهو مصدر لا فعل له من لفظه. وتقول لهم الملائكة هذا يوم الدين أي الحساب والجزاء. هذا يوم الفصل بين الخلائق الذي كنتم به تكذبون. Okay. And they said, rejecting resurrection. When we are dead and reduced to dust and bones, will we really be resurrected? And the two hamzas in a'inna, tahqiq, so a'inna or a'inna or a'inna, in both, so the first and the second, a'idha and a'inna, وآباؤنا الأولون, and our forefathers as well. So أو آباؤنا is عطف. Sorry. So yeah, so it can be read أو or أو آباؤنا, and with a fatha on the waw will be a question. والعطف بالواو.
And the wow at that time would be atf. So aw is one word, when it's awa, then it's istifham and atf.
Oh, okay. And the ma'tuf alayh is in place of inna.
So ma'tuf alay is connected to the inna and the ism of inna. The ism of inna is lamab'uthun.
Or
It's like one ayah in and of itself, but it's not a full sentence, right? It has to be connected to something else. So if you say awa abauna al-awwalun, it's connected to inna lamab'uthun, inna aw abauna al-awwalun, inna wa abauna al-awwalun, right? Us and our forefathers, right?
or the ضمير in لمبعوثون, والفاصل بينهم, so the thing separating the two ayahs.
So in that case, the fasila will be hamzatul istifham, which is talking about the أو آباؤنا, right?
قل نعم, say yes, you will be resurrected and you will be fully humbled, humiliated. It will take one blast, and here is an ambiguous ضمير, and what comes after it explains it. زجرة, صيحة, meaning one blast, then at once they will see it all. They will see all the creation alive again. No, فإذا هم, so the hum is the creation that will be brought to life again. ينظرون, they will see what will happen to them. They will cry, meaning the disbelievers will cry, oh woe to us, meaning our destruction. And wail is a masdar that has no fi'l. And the angels will say to them, this is the day of judgment, of reckoning and recompense. They will be told, this is the day of final decision between creation, which you used to deny. ويقال للملائكة احشروا الذين ظلموا أنفسهم بالشرك وأزواجهم قرناءهم من الشياطين وما كانوا يعبدون من دون الله أي غيره من الأوثان فاهدوهم دلوهم وسوقوهم إلى صراط الجحيم طريق النار وقفوهم احبسوهم عند الصراط إنهم مسؤولون عن جميع أقوالهم وأفعالهم ويقال لهم توبيخا ما لكم لا تناصرون لا ينصر بعضكم بعضا كحالكم في الدنيا ويقال لهم بل هم اليوم مستسلمون منقادون أذلاء وأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتساءلون يتلاومون ويتخاصمون قالوا أي الأتباع منهم للمتبوعين إنكم كنتم تأتوننا عن اليمين عن الجهة التي كنا نأمنكم منها بحلفكم أنكم على الحق فصدقناكم واتبعناكم المعنى أنكم أضللتمونا قالوا أي المتبوعون لهم بل لم تكونوا مؤمنين وإنما يصدق الإضلال منا أن لو كنتم مؤمنين فرجعتم عن الإيمان إلينا وما كان لنا عليكم من سلطان قوة وقدرة تقهركم على متابعتنا بل كنتم قوما طاغين ضالين مثلنا فحق وجب علينا جميعا قول ربنا بالعذاب أي قوله لأملأن جهنم من الجنة والناس أجمعين إنا جميعا لذائقون العذاب بذلك القول ونشأ عنه قولهم فأغويناكم المعلل بقولهم إنا كنا غاوين. And it will be said to the angels, gather all the wrongdoers that wrong themselves with polytheism, along with their peers of the shayateen and whatever they used to worship, besides Allah, meaning other than Him, of idols, then lead them, drag them all to the path of hellfire, and detain them at the like hold them at the sirat, for they must be questioned for all of their statements and actions, and it will be said to them out of rebuke, what is the matter with you that you no longer help each other like you used to in the world? And it will be said to them, in fact, on that day, they will be fully submissive and humiliated. They will turn on each other, throwing blame. So they will turn to each other, asking questions to one another, blaming and disputing with each other. So the followers, no. So the ones that were followed from them will say to the followers, it was you who deluded us away from what is right. Meaning, like we used to feel safe from you, because you swore that you were upon the truth. فصدقناكم, so we believed you and we followed you, meaning you are the ones that misled us. So the misleaders will reply, no, you disbelieved on your own. And misguidance from us, يصدق, like is affirmed or believed.
Could say affirmed.
Okay.
Or وإنما يصدق الإضلال منا أن لو كنتم مؤمنين فرجعتم عن الإيمان إلينا. That بل لم تكونوا مؤمنين, rather rather you are not believers. And إضلال, this accusation of leading you astray, يصدق would be true, minna, of us. So this accusation of leading you astray would be true of us. أن لو كنتم مؤمنين, if you had been believers first, فرجعتم عن الإيمان إلينا, and you basically left your iman إلينا to come to us, to return to us. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
when the followers accuse the leaders of leading them astray, one of the things they will say is that only makes sense if you had believed in the first place and then we took you out of belief into disbelief. But idlal here doesn't stick because you were never believers in the first place. Make sense?
Yeah. ما كان لنا عليكم. We had no authority over you, power and ability, forcing you to follow us. In fact, you yourselves were a transgressing people, misguided like us. So the decree of our Lord has come to pass against us all, with punishment, meaning his statement, of fire, with jinn and humans. We will certainly taste the punishment, because of that statement. وَنَشَأَ عَنْهُ قَوْلُهُ. And then they will say, so their statement will start, نَشَأَ. فَأَغْوَيْنَاكُمْ, we caused you to deviate, for we ourselves were deviant. I'm not sure what المعلل بقولهم.
So إِنَّا جَمِيعًا لَذَائِقُونَ, right? Then all of us will be in the punishment. وَنَشَأَ عَنْهُ قَوْلُهُم, and this would be prompted basically by their statement فَأَغْوَيْنَاكُمْ إِنَّا كُنَّا غَاوِينَ. Al-mu'allalu biqawlihim means the reason given of أغويناكم is that إِنَّا كُنَّا غَاوِينَ, therefore أغويناكم. Al-mu'allalu biqawlihim, the illah, the reason given.
Okay. قال تعالى فإنهم يومئذ يوم القيامة في العذاب مشتركون لاشتراكهم في الغواية إنا كذلك كما نفعل بهؤلاء نفعل بالمجرمين غير هؤلاء أي نعذبهم التابع منهم والمتبوع إنهم أي هؤلاء بقرينة ما بعده كانوا إذا قيل لهم لا إله إلا الله يستكبرون ويقولون أئنا فيه همزتيه ما تقدم لتاركوا آلهتنا لشاعر مجنون أي لأجل قول محمد. قال تعالى بل جاء بالحق وصدق المرسلين الجائين به وهو أن لا إله إلا الله إنكم فيه التفات لذائق العذاب الأليم وما تجزون إلا ما كنتم به تعملون. So Allah said, فَإِنَّهُمْ, surely on that day they will, on the day of judgment, they will all share in the punishment. لِاشْتِرَاكِهِمْ, because they shared in tempting one another. إِنَّ كَذَلِكَ, this is certainly how, like we dealt with these people, how we will deal with the wicked, غَيْرَ هَؤُلَاء, other than these people, meaning we will punish the followed and the followers for whenever it was said to them, meaning said to these people, بقرينة ما بعده, along with what was said after. For whenever it was said to them in the in the world. There is no God worthy of worship except Allah. They acted arrogantly and argued, should we really abandon our gods for an insane poet? Okay. Meaning, because of the statements of Muhammad, Allah said, in fact, he came with the truth, confirming earlier messengers that came with La ilaha illallah. Innakum, you will certainly taste the painful torment. And innakum is going from the third person to the second person. And you will only be rewarded for what you used to do. Yeah.
I can.
Let's see. 33. Okay, continue. Before you continue, internet's finally back up, so some notes on Surah Al-Safat. So, the surah is known as Safat because of a hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would command us to shorten or lighten the Jama'ah prayer. يَأْمُرُ بِالتَّخْفِيفِ. He would command us to lead Jama'ah that was light and not difficult for the sick, not difficult for the old. And he would lead us in Salah with Safat. He would lead us in Salah with Safat. وَيَأُمُّنَا بِالصَّافَات. And within the explanation of the hadith, it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ would command us to basically lead Salah with surahs that were similar to Surah Safat, right? In other words, in that length. And obviously, Surah Safat is like, a couple of pages, which is not light for our people. For our people, for majority of people today, light is at max, like, Surah A'la, Surah Ghashiyah, that type of length of Surah, right? Maximum 1 or 2 pages per rak'ah, if that, right? So this was according to Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu during the time of the Sahaba. So it's like a type of measure for a person when they are leading Salah, how much they should read. Obviously, you kind of base it on your audience as well. It's a Makki surah according to majority of Mufassirin, and focuses very, very heavily on the idea of Ba'ath, focuses on the idea of resurrection, and that the resurrection is true. The surah obviously highlights the shayateen eavesdropping on the malaika, trying to listen in on the malaika and trying to kind of give predictions based off of that. It comes in the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is warning against soothsayers, is warning against fortune tellers. And the Sahaba asked the Prophet that sometimes they're true, like sometimes they're actually right in what they predict and what they say. And the Prophet says that it's because they take the little what the shaitan gives them and they mix it up with 99 lies. So if it turns out to be true once or twice, and as they say, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? It doesn't mean that it's supposed to be taken as a source of truth, right? So the fortune tellers and the soothsayers, they get their information from the shayateen, who get their information from eavesdropping on the malaika. And as we saw, they are only able to pick up like snatches of conversation and very quickly. And when they are discovered, they are pursued by a flaming star, right? This surah also talks about the stories of some of the prophets like Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam's story, specifically Ibrahim alayhi salam's dream about his son Ismail alayhi salam is mentioned here, right? And some parts of the story of Musa and Harun. Other prophets like Ilyas, Lut, and Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam are also mentioned here as well. Right? And the surah, interestingly, focuses on the malaika as well very heavily. The surah begins with a description of the malaika as being standing in rows with safat, the safa, and Allah also rejects the myth of the malaika being his daughters, right? Which the Quraysh used to believe. So that comes throughout the surah and also at the end of the surah. Okay, continue.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أي المؤمنين استثناء منقطع ذكي or yeah. ذكر جزاؤهم في قوله أولئك لهم في الجنة رزق معلوم بكرة وعشية. فواكه بدل أو بيان للرزق وهي ما يؤكل تلذذا لا لحفظ صحة لأن أهل الجنة مستغنون عن حفظها بخلق أجسامهم للأبد وهم مكرمون بثواب الله في جنات النعيم على سرر متقابلين لا يرى بعضهم قفا بعد يطاف عليهم على كل منهم بكأس هو الإناء بشرابه من معين من خمر يجري على وجه الأرض كأنهار الماء بيضاء أشد بياضا من اللبن لذة لذيذة للشاربين بخلاف خمر الدنيا فإنها كريهة عند الشرب عند الشرب لا فيها غول ما يغتال عقولهم ولا هم عنها ينزفون بفتح الزاء وكسرها من نزف شارب وأنزف أي يسكرون بخلاف خمر الدنيا وعندهم قاصرات الطرف حابسات الأعين على أزواجهن لا ينظرن إلى غيرهم لحسنهم عندهن عين ضخام الأعين حسانها كأنهن في اللون بيض للنعام مكنون مستور بريشه لا يصل إليه غبار ولونه هو البياض في الصفرة أحسن ألوان النساء إلا عباد الله المخلصين that except for unlike Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's chosen servants meaning the believers استثناء منقطع and this is like an exception منقطع that believers الاستثناء منقطع
So إلا عباد الله المخلصين is استثناء منقطع. استثناء منقطع, if you remember from Tuhfa last year, استثناء منقطع means that whatever you were excluding this from didn't belong to the category before. So when you are doing this exclusion of إلا عباد الله المخلصين, they don't belong to what was mentioned right before it.
So it didn't belong to the category before. ذُكِرَ جَزَاؤُهُم, and their recompense was mentioned before. When he subhanahu wa ta'ala said أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُم, that for them.
So how is it istithna munqati', right? And it mentions this in footnote number 13 as well, because the believers are not rewarded by Allah like how the disbelievers are rewarded by Allah. وَمَا تُجْزَوْنَ إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ is referring to the people لَذَائِقُ الْعَذَابِ الْأَلِيمِ. The people who are going to be in this painful punishment, they are going to be rewarded for exactly what they used to do, which is sufficient for them to be punished in the fire because they did shirk. Make sense? However, إِلَّا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ الْمُخْلَصِينَ is istithna munqatir and is not istithna muttasil. Istithna muttasil would mean that they are literally part of the same category and they are also going to be rewarded for exactly what they used to do, which is not the case for the believers because Allah gives the believers above and beyond reward, above and beyond what they are uh, deserving of. Does that make sense? Like Allah multiplies the rewards for a person. Allah overlooks a person's faults. Allah gives Jannah for believing and for doing good, even though one can argue that a person might not have believed in Allah as he ought to have been believed in. You guys
If
follow?
we were to, yeah, if we were to say in English, Sheikh, like the difference between muttasil and munqati', would we say, so like وَمَا تَجْزَوْنَ إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ is talking about the disbelievers being recompensed. And if we said إِلَّا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ الْمُخْلَصِينَ was muttasil, we would say except, which doesn't make sense here. But because it's munqati', we're
It does
saying
make sense, even if you say except, because muttasil simply means that the group before and the group after are still the same. And in this case, what you're trying to compare them in is jaza, the level of jaza. For the disbelievers, they're getting a one-to-one. For the believer, it was never a one-to-one. It was always do one deed and multiplied by 10. Do one deed multiplied by 25, multiplied by 100. Does that make sense?
okay, so it's not just a grammatical difference. 'Cause I was going to say then munqati' would be, instead of except, you would say but not for the, well, yeah, you would say but not for the believers. But it's
Still
just
the
talking
same.
about
You're
categorical.
doing istithna in both muttasil and munqati'.
Okay.
But by having one be muttasil versus munqati', you are also pointing out that it's either not part of it or part of it. Right?
أولئك لهم, those are the ones for whom, meaning in Jannah, that they will have a known provision or risk. بكرة وعشية, meaning in the morning and in the evening. بكرة وعشية فواكه, so fruits, بدل أو بيان للرزق, and this is like a substitute or a clarification of what that risk will entail. وهي ما يؤكل تلذذا, and it is what is eaten like out of enjoyment and not out of preserving health. لأن أهل الجنة مستغنون عن حفظها, because the people of Jannah they have no like need of preserving like the creation of their bodies ever. وهم مكرمون, and they will be honored بثواب الله, like with the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, في جنات النعيم, in paradise, في جنات النعيم, I guess like of enjoyment or bliss, على سرر متقابلين, and they will be on couches facing each other. لا يرى بعضهم قفا بعض, so that they don't see لا يرى بعضهم like each other's backs. يطاف عليهم, and they will be يطاف, like going around each other.
Mhm.
يطاف عليهم على كل منهم بكأس. Okay, so there will be like cups of or containers of like sharab, drinks that will be going around them. Min ma'in, from a spring of wine that flows ala wajh al-ard, on the face of the earth, like rivers of water.
Mm.
Bayda, and it will be white, intense in its whiteness from, like laban, from like milk. And it will be laddat in the sharibin, like something that is enjoyable or delightful to drink. بخلاف خمر الدنيا, unlike the wine of this earth. فإنها كريهة عند الشراب, and that is something that is like disliked or distasteful to drink. لا فيها غول, لا فيها غول. Yes, like there will be no like displeasure, ما يختال عقولهم, or like something, okay, and it will not like interrupt their senses. ولا هم عنها ينزفون, like nor will they be like wary from it.
Mhm.
بفتح الزاء وكسرها, so it could be ينزفون or ينزفون. من نزف الشارب وأنزف, like from the tiredness of drinking. أي يسكرون, meaning intoxicated.
أي يسكرون.
Like that's intoxicated, right?
Intoxicates, right? So ينزفون, either with a kasra or fatha, ينزفون, ينزفون, comes from the phrase نزف الشارب, or it could be أنزف, right? Both of them, which basically mean, yuskaru, askara, yuskiru, or yuskaru, which means to be intoxicated. That's where we get the word sukara from, right? And this is as opposed to the khamar of the world.
وعند يسكن بخلاف خمر الدنيا وعندهم قاصرات الطرفين, and by their side there will be عندهم قاصرات الطرف, like it's talking about like their wives will restrict their eyes or their glances.
وعندهم قاصرات الطرف عين, and with them will be maidens of modest gaze and gorgeous eyes. Mufti Taqi's one is, and by their side will be females restricting their gazes to their husbands, having pretty big eyes. Right?
Where does the, like in the ayah specifically, is the like wives part implied? Because qasirat is to like shorten or restrict, right?
Well, qasirat al-tarfi means to lower, to restrict, right? But the context is the one that tells us that it's the females of Jannah, whether it's wives of the or the hurs, doesn't matter. By context, you understand it's talking about that because there's no other equivalent, right?
ضخام الأعين حسانها, with like big beautiful eyes, كأنهن في اللون, and as if they were in color, white. للنعام مكنون. I don't know how to translate that. من نعام أنهن بيض مكنون.
أنهم, as if they were في اللون, in complexion, بيض, luminous, I guess, white, like eggs, للنعام, like ostrich eggs, because ostrich eggs have a very particularly pale color, as opposed to other eggs which can vary in color. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So it's more about so it says, كأنهن, as if they are في اللون لا في الشكل. Obviously, they don't look like eggs because that's not the point, right? The كأنهن is about the color or the complexion, right? If you look at footnote 10 and 11, that's what it mentions. Khattab has a footnote. He says بيض مكنون can also mean spotless eggs. بيض مكنون can also mean spotless eggs. So like, pristine beauty. كأنهن بيض مكنون, as if they were eggs hidden. So this could be, so Khattab translates it as if they were pristine pearls. So pearls have kind of the shape of eggs, right? And they have the same type of color. So he, I guess, put that translation. But Mufti Taqi's translation is more direct, and it's, taking in line the tafsir, because he says, as if they were eggs hidden, and then he puts in brackets under feathers protected from pollution. That's literally what is mentioned after maknoon here. Masturun bi rishihi, right? That is hidden by the feathers. La yasilu ilayhi ghubar, so the dust doesn't reach it. Walawnuhu, and the color of it, وهو البياض في صفرة, and it is whitish in pallor. Sufra is pallor, Pallor, kind of like the shade. أحسن ألوان النساء. This, again, you gotta not necessarily take it with a grain of salt, but there's a subjectivity there. أحسن ألوان النساء, for you to say, fair complexion or white is the most beautiful color. That's gonna obviously, not just it's inappropriate, but it would cause you a lot of problems, right? So it kind of shows the subjectivities of the mufassirin that could also come through, because Mufti Taqi's one, for example, he says كأنهن بيض مكنون. It's talking more about how the maidens of Jannah were hidden from sight. They are protected. Does that make sense? And yes, in other places their complexion is mentioned, but it's more of it's a Jannati type of description, which has the closest approximation to something pale white in our world, right? Because, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ talks about the leaves of Sidratul Muntaha, right? The tree at Sidratul Muntaha, which the Prophet ﷺ saw, he says, and the Quran says that it had colors that couldn't be described, because it's clearly from that realm of the unseen, right? So we could definitely take this as something of the mufassir, right? And beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And there's a lot to be said of how certain complexions and things like that are kind of conditioned or kind of promoted as the higher standard, right? Which obviously is not something that we are supposed to believe in, right? Mm-hmm.
Sheikh, so bayl here, because bayl literally means egg, right?
Yeah.
So it's not related to, I guess they are related, but it's not, because you translated it first before saying egg, you said luminous white, which
Yeah, because it says filoni.
Okay, it's still referring to the, but that's the commentary. The ayah specifically is mentioning
Yeah,
the
which is
egg.
why Mufti Taqi's one
Yeah.
says directly as if it was a hidden egg, which
Yeah.
means, he puts in brackets, protected by feathers, protected from pollution, things like that.
Yeah, I get Khattad's translation though. I guess like for us, like we wouldn't really understand how to interpret that.
Mm.
uh, okay. فأقبل بعض أهل الجنة على بعض يتساءلون عما مر بهم في الدنيا قال قائل منهم إني كان لي قرين صاحب ينكر البعث يقول ينكر البعث يقول لي تبكيتا أئنك لمن مصدقين بالبعث أإذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما إنا في الهمزتين في 3 مواضع ما تقدم لمدينون مجزيون محاسبون أنكر ذلك أيضا قال ذلك القائل لإخوانه هل أنتم مطلعون معي إلى النار لننظر حاله فيقولون لا فطلع ذلك القائل من بعد كوى الجنة فرآه أي رأى قرينه في سواء الجحيم أي وسط النار قال له تشميتا تالله إن مخففة من الثقيلة كدت قاربت لتردين لتهلكني بإغوائك ولولا نعمة ربي أي إنعامه أي إنعامه آه، is it علي or على
Mhm.
should be على or is it علي أي
سعد
إنعام
Yeah, I think it's a typo.
شيخ
آه،
إنعامه علي بالإيمان shut down there.
Oh yeah, ولولا نعمة ربي. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
علي
Okay.
أي إنعامه علي بالإيمان لكنت من المحضرين معك في النار ويقول أهل الجنة أفما نحن بميتين.
Okay. Mm. Is that Toby? Well, actually, just read the next 2 lines also. That would complete the paragraph.
إلا موتتنا الأولى أي التي في الدنيا وما نحن بمعذبين هو استفهام تلذذ وتحدث بنعمة الله تعالى من تأبيد الحياة وعدم التعذيب إن هذا الذي ذكر لأهل الجنة لهو الفوز العظيم لمثل هذا فليعمل العاملون قيل يقال لهم ذلك وقيل هم يقولون فأقبل بعضهم على بعض that they will turn to each other asking بعد أهل like meaning to the others in Jannah على بعد asking one another عما مر بهم في الدنيا like what they passed by or like what they experienced
What the
and
experience? Yeah.
is the literal translation like passed by
Yeah, pass by. Mm.
so what they experienced in the dunya and one of them will say that indeed I had a like companion or friend صاحب ينكر البعث somebody that denied the resurrection and he said يقول لي تبكيتا and he said to me like reproachingly
Yeah.
أئنك لمن المصدقين like are you from those that are truthful uh, about the resurrection أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما that when إذا متنا وكنا ترابا like when we die and we become dust and bones that we will be إنا لمدينون that like we will be called to account um في الهمزتين في 3 مواضع um
So all 3 places. إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمدينون. So and then from the previous ayah أئنك لمن المصدقين. So that's the ثلاثة مواضع. Right? So and all 3 of those words and both of the hamzas ما تقدم basically are the rules that has passed previously.
why is he calling that out
What?
like what does he mean by calling out it's the 3 hamzas
The 3 words that have the 2 hamzas أئنك لمن المصدقين أإذا متنا and inna lamadinun. All three words with the two hamzas have the same type of qira'at that passed previously, because these words inna and aida, comes up frequently in the surah. So he's not just repeating it here.
مجزيون ومحاسبون. Um,
Like rewarded and taken into account.
أنكر ذلك أيضا. And he rejects that as well. قال, and it will be said, ذلك القائل لإخوانه, and like the speaker will say to his friend or brother, هل أنتم مطلعون, that will you like look معي, with me, to the fire, لننظر حاله, and see its condition or state. فيقولون, and they will say no. فطلع ذلك, and he will like see ذلك القائل من بعد, like a من بعدك والجنة. Sorry? Oh, cool. Yeah, that like some of the people of Jannah.
No. So they will, so that person who commented this, ذلك القائل, that person would be shown, or he would see from some of the, so kuwa means an opening, like an aperture of Jannah. This is, basically an opening that allows them to see into the condition of that person that they used to know and who had rebuked them about believing, and et cetera, right? So that, because usually when we say opening and you're able to see through it to something else, it means that that thing is right next to you. So here it doesn't mean that Jannah is right next to Jahannam, whereby a person can just look out a window and see the people of Jahannam, right? But rather there would be like an opening that would show them what that person is going through in Jahannam.
And he will see his companion in the center of Jahannam, meaning the middle of the fire. قال له تشميتا, and he will say to him, تشميتا, like in acknowledgement.
Well, cursing, tashmit.
Sorry, say it again. How did you?
So, Tallahi in kitta laturdin. By Allah, you nearly ruined me. So, this is the statement of the person in Jannah saying to the person who they used to know in the world is now being punished in Jahannam. So tashmitan here, if you look at footnote 18, it says al-farhu was-sururu bima yusibu al-aduwa min al-masa'ib. Tashmit is a type of happiness that a person gets when they see their enemy afflicted with difficulty. And then it says ash-shamatatu al-farhu bi baliyatil adubi. This is the German equivalent of Schadenfreude, which is to express joy at the misery of your enemies. It's a very human emotion, because when you think about somebody who is vindicated, right? When you think of somebody who is vindicated, for them to feel joy at proving their enemies wrong, it's a very human thing. Does that make sense? So in this case, this person was reproached by whoever they knew in the world for believing in Allah, and now when they see what's happening to that person, they'll say, Tallahi, by Allah, you were very close to ruining me. In kitta laturdin. Right? By Allah, you were almost going to ruin me. Latuhlikani bi ighwa'ika. You would have destroyed me with your ignorance, right? With your with your you know, what's this called? Misguidance.
With your misguidance, if it were not for the favor of my Lord, meaning his favor upon me with Iman, I would have been from those that were with you or like present, meaning in the fire. And وَيَقُولُ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ, the people of Jannah will say, أَفَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَيِّتِينَ, that will we not die, إِلَّا مَوْتَتَنَا الْأُولَى, except for our first death, the one in the world, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ, and are we not to be punished? And this is a question in like joy or delight. وَتَحَدُّثُ بِنِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ, and they will speak about the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in like granting life that lasts forever, وَعَدْمَ تَعْذِيبٍ, and the lack of punishment. Inna hadha, and this indeed what has been mentioned about the people of Jannah, the Fawz al-Azim, is the greatest success. لِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ, and like for the like of this, or for what is similar to this, let the people work. And it will be said, يُقَالُ لَهُمْ ذَلِكَ, what is said to them, وَقِيلَ, or it is said, هُمْ يَقُولُونَ,
So
or
فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ will either be something that is said to them, that is said to the believers, or something that يَقُولُونَهُ, something that they will say themselves. Right?
Sheikh, so how do you get the to themselves part of it from Yaquluna? Because Yaqulun literally means they will say.
Who else are they going to say it to, right? Because if you look at footnote number 5, footnote number 5. So أي ما ذكر من الجملتين من قبل الله تعالى وقوله قيل هم يقولونه أي يقول بعضهم لبعض.
But so I guess the who is what's throwing me off. Like, why, if they're saying it to themselves, meaning it's plural, why wouldn't it be
Not to themselves, to each other. يقولون, because believers are multiple in Jannah, and they are saying it to each other.
Okay, so the who, it would, even though it's multiple people.
No, the who is referring to the phrase. They would it, which is the phrase فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay. Let's stop here. So we are currently in second to last week of October. Right, so we basically have including this week, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 weeks of classes, inshallah, until Thanksgiving break. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks until Thanksgiving break, and then after Thanksgiving break we have 1, 2, 3. So we basically have 8 weeks of classes. We have 8 weeks of classes total until the end of the year, until winter break, inshallah. And of course, we have 2 weeks of winter break plus 1 week of finals right after we get back before the spring semester starts. So 8 weeks of classes. Reason why I'm mentioning this is we're on currently 660, page 660, and page 704 till the end of page 107, till the end of page 704 is the end of the 24th juz. So we are currently almost midway through the 23rd juz, and the 24th juz finishes on page 704. So we have about 44 pages, 44 pages over 8 weeks, I think is very, very, very doable, right? If we're ahead of schedule, inshallah, that's one goal. Inshallah, we'll try to do it till the end of 24th juz by winter break. Inshallah, that's one goal. That's a preliminary goal. If we are ahead of schedule and we're kind of we've been able to get ahead quicker, we'll try to finish the 25th juz by winter break if possible. And the 25th juz finishes on page 732. So it's about another 30-ish pages. So, right. So either definitely try to finish the 24th juz by winter break. And if we're ahead of schedule, then we will obviously continue past the 24th juz, and then we will try to finish the 25th juz if possible. If not, then obviously we'll just stop wherever we are by the time the break comes around, inshallah. But this kind of just makes it simpler, like 5 juz in the fall semester, 5 juz in the spring semester. This will give us some more time to do other things in Jalalain, especially during Ramadan, inshallah, like with other tafasir. And if we happen to finish Jalalain slightly earlier, then we have more time to do Hidayat al-Nahwu, which is kind of being done over whatever 2 classes a week, right? Okay. So just FYI to kind of keep it in mind, so that we have a target, so to speak, right? So we have 15 minutes, and we'll just do the next part of the marfu'at. So this is on page 80. So we are in the chapter of marfu'at, the 8 things that receive dhamma and are in the state of rafa. We finished the first chapter, which was about fa'il. There was a lot of discussions within that. This one, na'ibul fa'il, tafsilul maf'ul ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu, the maf'ul whose fa'il is not mentioned, also known as the na'ibul fa'il, is much shorter. It's literally just a couple of lines. So we're going to do that, and we'll just stop for today, because the next 2, mubtada and khabar, right? Mubtada and khabar are mentioned together in one chapter, because obviously they're literally, half of the same sentence. So tafsilul mubtada wal khabar will be together, and that one is going to be a good number of pages. So inshallah we'll start that on Wednesday, inshallah. So today we'll just do the maf'ul ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu. So this is on page 80. Tafsilul maf'ul ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu. This is the explanation of maf'ul whose fa'il is not mentioned. Faslun maf'ulu ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu. What is the maf'ul whose fa'il is not named or mentioned? وهو كل مفعول حذف فاعله وأقيم هو مقامه نحو ضرب زيد. So it is every maf'ul whose fa'il has been dropped. Every maf'ul whose fa'il has been dropped, and uqima huwa, and it has been placed, meaning the maf'ul has been placed maqamahu, in the place of its fa'il. So when you say daraba zaydun amran, Zayd is fa'il and amr is maf'ul, so each one is in its own place. When you say duriba zaydun, You have a maf'ul because Zayd is the one that was hit, so it received the action. It is the maf'ul, but the fa'il of that is not mentioned. So the maf'ul, which is Zayd, is put in the place of the fa'il, which is why it gets the rafa. It's a maf'ul, but it's a maf'ul that actually gets the rafa. Duriba Zaydun. Okay, so this is a little tricky because obviously we think of maf'ul as just mansub, but the mansub is when the maf'ul comes in its actual place, right? And when it's marfu', it's because the fa'il of it is not mentioned, right? So this is obviously very specifically to naibul fa'il.
Shaykh, question for Naib al-Fa'il. Is the reason why specifically it gets the marfu' or like the dhamma because it's mansub in meaning technically, right? Is the reason because every sentence grammatically needs to have a fa'il even though that's not the fa'il? Like what's the reason they wouldn't leave it as mansub?
Well, the reason why it's marfu' as opposed to mansub very literally is uqima huwa maqamahu. That if this maf'ul had come in its own place, it would have been mansub. But because it is moved to the place of the fa'il, and the fa'il is marfu', this maf'ul becomes marfu' as well, even though it has the meaning of maf'ul. Does that make sense?
So that's the point that I'm saying. Like you're referring to it as the fa'il, even though it's technically not the fa'il. It takes the place of it in the sentence.
This is the fa'il, right? Exactly.
But so we're saying every sentence that is verbal has to have a fa'il. That's the reason.
Because
Yeah.
you need every fa'il needs a fa'il. Every fa'il needs a fa'il, and that fa'il could either be the dhamir or it could be an explicit word after the fa'il, right? It doesn't need a maf'ul to be a complete sentence, right? So when you say duriba zaydun, we call it a naibul fa'il. It's the representative of the fa'il. It's taking the place of the fa'il. It's not a fa'il in reality, right? But because it's in the place of the fa'il, it takes the i'rab of the fa'il as well. Right? Okay, so if you look at the extension on page 81, this is on top of the table. So the reason the author has mentioned naibul fa'il directly after the fa'il, because fa'il is the first of the marfu'at that we talked about, and now it's naibul fa'il because of the very close attachment between the two in terms of the link of the verb to both of them. Namely, the fa'il and the naibul fa'il are both connected to a fa'al. Is the reason why some grammarians like Zamakhshari count naibul fa'il as part of the fa'il. So it's not even, they don't even count the maf'ul ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu as like its own thing. Rather, they say the naibul fa'il is like a subtype of the fa'il. It's just like FYI, like a very interesting tidbit. And this next one is important because when you say that the naibul fa'il is actually a maf'ul in reality, right? Because it is the one that is receiving the action, it just is in the state of rafa because it's in the place of the fa'il. So if it's a maf'ul in reality, the question is, which of the mafa'il khamsa can be a naibul fa'il? Because we just don't have one type of maf'ul, we have 5 types of maf'ul, and we have others that are also considered like mafa'il. Which ones can serve as a naibul fa'il? That's what the table is about on page 81. So if you look at it, number 1, maf'ul bihi duriba zaydun. According to all grammarians, it is permissible to have the maf'ul bihi as the naibul fa'il. Number 2, maf'ul mutlaq duribat darbatun. According to all grammarians, it is permissible to bring the maf'ul mutlaq as a naibul fa'il. However, there's one condition, there's a caveat, which is that the maf'ul mutlaq be not for emphasis. Because if you remember the maf'ul mutlaq, we haven't covered in Hidayat al-Nahwi yet. That's going to come up in the Mansubat chapter, right? But we did it in Tuhfa last year. Maf'ul mutlaq can come for more than one meaning, and one of those meanings is emphasis. So as long as the maf'ul mutlaq doesn't come for emphasis, you could have the maf'ul mutlaq act as a naibul fa'il. Number 3, maf'ul fi. Julisa makanun qaribun. He was sat in a nearby place or in a near place. That's how you translate this. He was sat in a near place. According to all grammarians, it is permissible to bring the maf'ul fi as a naibul fa'il. However, with the condition that the place time is specific. Okay, so you have to have specificity in the example. So here, for example, we're not saying julisa makanun. That wouldn't be, he was sat in a place. That's not grammatically correct because the makanun is still nakira. The makanun is nakira. It doesn't specify the place. But when you say makanun qaribun, you're saying a nearby place. So that fulfills the criteria which allows the maf'ul fi to act as a naibul fa'il. Look at number 5 and 6 first. So skip number 4, which is tamyiz. Number 5 and 6, number 5 is maf'ul lahu, and number 6 is maf'ul ma'ahu. So maf'ul lahu and maf'ul ma'ahu, it is not permissible for you to have them act as a naibul fa'il. So out of the 5 mafa'il, out of the mafa'il khamsa, other than maf'ul ma'ahu and maf'ul lahu, the other 3 can act as a naibul fa'il. Make sense? Again, the only reason we're talking about this is because if the naibul fa'il is actually a maf'ul in place of the fa'il, then which of the 5 mafa'il can act as a naibul fa'il? And the answer to that is maf'ul bihi, maf'ul fi, as long as there's specificity, and maf'ul mutlaq as long as it is not for emphasis. So that accounts for 5 mafa'il. The table says 8. The table says 8 things, right? And the reason why the table says 8 is because other than the 5 mafa'il, you also have 3 other mansubat. The tamyiz, the hal, and the mustathna. Tamyiz, hal, and mustathna. Okay? Now, these 3, can you consider them to be the naibul fa'il? So number 4 is tamyiz. So tiba nafsu zaydin or taba zaydun nafsan. Well, tiba nafsu zaydin is the tamyiz form of the very normal sentence, taba zaydun nafsan. According to most grammarians, it is not permissible to bring the tamyiz as naibul fa'il, although Kisai, for example, allows it. So, minority opinion, generally speaking, the tamyiz is not permitted to be as a naibul fa'il. And the hal and mustathna, which is number 7 and 8, are also not permissible to bring as the naibul fa'il. So, simply put, naibul fa'il is only possible with maf'ul bihi, with maf'ul mutlaq, as long as it's not for emphasis, and for maf'ul fi, as long as there's specificity in the example. Are you guys following?
Yeah.
This type of categorization, like bringing the hal as part of the mafa'il, this you guys came across in book 2 of your Arabic series, right? So Lisan 102, book 2, in year 2, when you went over the mafa'il khamsa for the first time, chapter 13. I only remember because I'm teaching Lisan 102 in the part-time this year. The maf'ul chapter in that book talks about the mafa'il, and it also adds the hal because it's mansub, and they have their own They have their own reasoning as to why it's included there. But obviously the mafa'il khamsa are distinct and separate from tamyiz, hal, and mustathna, although all 8 of them are part of the mansubat, right? Okay. So page 82, حكم المفعول ما لم يسمى فاعله. The rule of مفعول ما لم يسمى فاعله وحكمه في توحيد فعله وتثنيته وجمعه وتذكيره وتأنيثه على قياس ما عرفت في الفاعل. The rule of نائب الفاعل, the rule of نائب الفاعل in في توحيد فعله, in the rule of نائب الفاعل for its fi'l to come in the singular form, في توحيد فعله, for its fi'l to come in the singular form or the dual form or the jamar form, or the mudhakkar or the muannath, is going to be exactly what you had learned in the fa'il chapter. What does that mean? Let's look at the table, very simply laid out. Just like how you would say ضرب زيد, right? And ضرب زيداني and ضرب زيدون. You would say ضرب زيد, ضرب زيداني, ضرب زيدون, right? And then just how you would say زيد ضرب زيدان ضربا زيدون ضربوا. You would say زيد ضرب الزيدان ضربا الزيدون ضربوا. Because if you remember, if the fa'il comes after the fi'il always remains in the singular form. If the fa'il comes before the fi'il, then there has to be tatbiq, there has to have correspondence in number, which is why it becomes az-zaydani duriba or daraba or az-zayduna duribu darabu. Okay? In terms of mudhakkar and muannath, there has to be correspondence. So it's duribat hindun, just like how it would be darabat hindun, and hindun duribat, it would also be hindun darabat. So it's the same thing. So there has to be correspondence in gender, but obviously that might change as well. So look at number 9. Duriba al-yawma hindun, duribatil yawma hindun. The example in the fa'il section that was daraba al-yawma hindun or darabat al-yawma hindun. Why do you have a choice in this type of example? Because there's a fa'asila. There's a separation between the fi'l and the fa'il, correct? Because there's a separation between the fi'l and the fa'il, you have the choice of making the verb mudhakkar or muannath, even if the fa'il is muannath. Are you guys following? This came up in the fa'il chapter already, so I'm just going through it. Number 10. كورت الشمس كورت الشمس. So if the fa'il comes first and the fa'il comes second, but the fa'il is mu'annath غير حقيقي. Remember that term? It is a feminine word that doesn't have a masculine counterpart. So like the word shams, even though there's no fasila, even though there's no separation between the fi'l and the fa'il, like the example on top, al-yawma, you have a choice between the masculine or feminine verb because the fa'il, which is mu'annath, is a mu'annath غير حقيقي. So you can say كورت الشمس or كور الشمس. However, if you look at number 11, you say الشمس كورت. You have to make it mu'annath when the fa'il comes first, even if it's mu'annath غير حقيقي, and the fi'l comes second, then the fi'l has to correspond with the fa'il. So for example, إذا الشمس كورت, right? Number 12 and 13 are to do with masculine plural fa'il. Masculine plural fa'il. If you have a jama mukassar which is acting as a fa'il, then you have a choice of masculine or feminine verb. You could say ضرب الرجال ضربت الرجال. So for the naib al-fa'il, it would be the same. You could say ضُرِبَ الرِّجَالُ or ضُرِبَتِ الرِّجَالُ. However, if you switch the order of the fa'il and the fi'l, then you would say الرِّجَالُ ضَرَبُوا or الرِّجَالُ ضَرَبَتْ. So you could make it either, make the fa'il mudhakkar and have it match in number to the jama mukassar, in which case you would say ar-rijalu darabu or ar-rijalu duribu. But when it's switched and you have the fa'il, which is a jama mukassar first, and then you have the fi'l, which is mu'annath, then you're not going to correspond it in number. You can you just have it as a singular feminine. So you could say ar-rijalu darabat, or you could say ar-rijalu duribat, right? But you cannot say, for example, ar-rijalu darabana, right? Just like how you said ar-rijalu darabu or ar-rijalu duribu, you cannot say ar-rijalu duribana or ar-rijalu darabana. It has to be singular feminine. So this entire thing, all these different variations we came across in the fa'il chapter previously, right? So this is just a rehash of it because the naibul fa'il follows the same exact rules as the fa'il when it comes to corresponding with the fi'il in terms of number and gender, right? Follows the same exact rules. Okay, so that just takes care of that very small section of naibul fa'il. And then inshallah on Wednesday we will continue with mubtada and khabar. For tomorrow inshallah, prep accordingly to our class, right? So we should be able to do quite a few pages inshallah. Like our average last year I think was around 7-8 pages, if not more. All right, so prep accordingly inshallah. All right, any questions?
Gotcha.
جزاك الله سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله وبحمده استغفر الله استغفر الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام.